Okay, so welcome to the podcast, guys. We're having our first podcast, at least I have my first podcast, since the expansion launch for Vessel of Hatred. So I invited Rax, DM, and DatModz to join us. We want to talk about basically everything that the expansion has to offer. So we're going to go through the Spiritborn, through the new content and the old content, just generally how the season has been going. There has also been like a lot of stuff with bugs and exploits that there's probably going to be a lot of discussion about. We can talk about the Paragon system, the pits, and just in general everything that comes to mind here. So the expected time for this is roughly 2 hours. I'm going to try to keep it to that and navigate the discussion a little bit. Before we start, I would like to have a short introduction though from everyone here, starting with DM, then Rax, and then Mods. And then we jump into the Spiritborn discussion.
I'm DM. Hello. Play video games and currently playing Diablo.
I'm Rax. I wear a blue hoodie. I play games all day, no matter what.
That's pretty funny. Okay, I'm just DatModz. I've been streaming forever, and I like playing Diablo 4 and other games. Blue hoodie guy.
All right, and I'm wudijo. I play also a lot of Diablo. I am the team lead on the Maxroll Diablo branch as well, and I do a lot of guides. All right, let's jump into it. So I think the first big topic is the new class. I expect everyone here has played a lot. Is anyone here who has not played the new class a lot?
No, yeah. I've only been playing Druid. I've not played Spiritborn at all.
Really?
No, I'm joking.
I was going to say base.
I was going to say, that's not true.
Yeah. All right. In that case, let's talk about the Spiritborn. So we can talk about like anything Spiritborn related. Of course, the class is extremely powerful right now, thanks to many bugs that at some point will get fixed. But yeah, what do you think about it? Like, what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? Let's just jump into that very like open discussion.
All right. Well, I can start. I actually love the Spiritborn class. I would say it's my favorite class out of all the ones in Diablo 4. I think the theory crafting possibilities, we still probably haven't unlocked everything about it. I thought it was so fun every week that there was this new build that did 10 trillion damage, quadrillions of damage. I like how a lot of the different playstyles could feel different, but I guess moving into the stuff that I don't like, all of these bugs, all of these mechanics that just don't work have kind of pigeonholed us into like stacking resolve and stacking armor and 1500 weapon damage. And now we have 4000% critical strike damage. So I actually think that genuinely the class will be even more fun when they get rid of this crap. And then we can actually theory craft with what is actually there. And, I think the class is only going to improve when this stuff goes away. A lot of people get really upset when you lose like a couple of zeros on your damage level, but I think it really is just breaking the game, and I look forward to them making corrections to it.
Yeah, no, it really feels like the first class with their new design philosophy from original Diablo 4. They wanted that slower, more methodical play style and like the damage on Tuesdays. But now, with how the game has evolved, especially through Season 4 and Season 5, right, and we're ended up being a lot quicker paced game, more like Diablo 3, where people joke around that Diablo 4 is now Diablo 3.5 with all the adopted systems. Spiritborn really feels like the first class that adopts all those new design philosophies in a nutshell, right? It just feels so fluid and amazing to play your transitions between your different skills. And really, it's just a rod class at this point, right? Most of the build all revolve around one weapon that's really just scaling the damage just to insane amounts. But yeah, no, I actually love the Spiritborn. It reminds me of Monk from Diablo 3. There's so many similarities, and I just like the fast, agile pacing of it. It just feels so fluid and very modern. Yeah. Like if you like think about Druid or anything else like this early game in Spiritborn, it's like it's like you just ate like a bunch of Taco Bell and you're waddling around Sanctuary, and then you get on Spiritborn and you're all jacked up on energy drink. You know what I mean? It's so night and day difference. It feels so amazing to play outside of all the outliers and bugs that Rax already talked about.
Yeah, it's hard not to like the Spiritborn. Like one of the things I liked about Druid is I feel like there's quite a variety in playstyle. where I feel like when I'm on a druid, I can do like lightning or the companions, etc. Spiritborn feels the same way. Like I feel like I can kind of play mid range with like Quill. You have the up in your face punching. The dots are probably the reason I liked it the most. I know what most of us here tested it. And when I was testing it, the centipede dots were what was drawing me to the class, and they're kind of fun. Again, I'm curious to see where like the touch of death build and the dot style build actually ends up falling on once all the other bugs are fixes, like Rax was saying. But I don't know why anyone went like the Spiritborn. It has everything you want. You can literally teleport to people while you're at, core attacking. It's one of the funnest classes in the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I was a rogue main, and now I'm like maining Spiritborn for the launch, and I had a blast. Like I've tried like 8 different builds now or something already. I've been like just leveling alts and then trying a new build on them all the time. And all of them feel kind of similar, like with the like teleporting to enemies with the Ravager, or even like the basic attacks all have that teleport built in. So it's definitely what Mod says, with like this extra like fast pace and like unconditional damage. And you also have like this extra damage against bosses of one of the passives that they can stack up the damage. So it has like all the problems that existed fixed, right? It's like no build on Spiritborn that really has huge problems, I feel. So that's really good about it, I guess. And I wonder how much that will actually like kind of like carry over to other classes in the future, if they're gonna get like some other updates to the skills, like some other updates to the paragons or something, because of all these conditional effects that still plague, for example, especially Rogue and like Sorks, and with the boss damage, they always have huge issues with that, with the staggering. And Spiritborn just doesn't have to. You just walk in, you just punch the boss, and that's it, right? So yeah, I do have to agree though, like especially like looking at what Drax said, pre-launch, like I was sitting here, like I was playing the early access, and then I was cooking builds, and then the early access ended, and we had like 3 days until launch or something, and I was just cooking builds and writing guides on Maxroll, and it was actually so sad to see that all the stuff that I kind of came up with has like evaporated right after launch because of all the bugs, and now we have to go giga life stacking, giga resolve stacking, and whatever. And it's like all very similar on the builds now, because I actually had like a huge variety of builds before launch that I made, and was like, okay, like this works this way, this works that way. I used to like different mechanics on the class, and everything is kind of like the same now. So that is like really sad to see. And I'm also sad to see that they're just not updating it, like not fixing the bugs and stuff.
I think it's gonna be a very tough task to bring the other classes up to the Spiritborn's level. Now, it would be easy to just make them clear like the same pit level. Like there are very easy ways to solve that with just numbers. But for me, there's like a larger problem here that we're kind of alluding to. It's like the polish, right? As Mod said, all the skills interact very well with each other. There's so many ways to gap close. There's so many ways to solve your survivability problems. And there's just so many tools there that like I compare it to, like, let's say the sorcerer and let's say the firewall build, for example. Sorcerer for firewall is so godly for leveling. It's like one of the very best. You just delete everything, but the build for so long, for so many seasons, doesn't have a future. There's no way to make it like anywhere near as good as its other endgame builds. So you eventually just throw it away and abandon it for something else. But for the Spiritborn, a lot of their builds, you can just stick with it, even despite all of these bugs. I think a lot of these builds where you go Crushing Hand or Touch of Death or Quill Volley or Evade, a lot of them start pretty good and have a future. And so solving all of these problems for a lot of different builds on all the other classes is like a polish problem. And polish can usually only be solved through a lot of time, right? And design. It just feels like the Spiritborn got way more attention for way longer. And I think it's going to be hard for Blizzard to close the gap on that on a lot of these classes.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a 2.0 revamp, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. Just them totally redesigning everything at all. Maybe they will.
I could imagine that we're gonna see maybe the fruits of this discussion eventually, in the next expansion, for example, or so, right? Where now they realize, okay, we've made this new class, and Diablo 4 is modernized in some ways, and this is just how the game is played now. It's faster and so on. And maybe we're gonna actually see, like, the removal of more conditional effects, and we're gonna get other stuff instead, or other ways to like solve the problems that the classes have, right? Like the stagger problem I alluded to on the rogue, for example. Maybe there would eventually be an alternative to staggering the boss and actually killing it or something like that, right? So they could like definitely take some time over the seasons, maybe implement some features and then like do a big revamp later.
Yeah. They can always do temporary solutions too, like where classes are still overly dependent on crowd control. They could just remove like some of the diminishing returns on bosses, so you could just stagger more often, especially for higher pit stuff. That's where stagger-based builds really suffer the most, right? When they're pushing really, really high-end builds, and you stagger the bosses enough time, and then you're just like, okay, I'm not going to stagger again. I want to do no damage, and then
Yeah,
I want to
exactly.
fight this boss for 6 minutes while dodging Lilith effects, right? That's really how it is. So you like front load your damage, then you hit the DR, and then it's like, oh man, what am I going to do now? Just play dance around Lilith stuff and try not to die. So that might be a good temporary solution.
Yeah,
It's definitely a huge problem.
Go ahead, DM. You were going to say something?
I was going to say, it feels like I'm sitting here thinking about what it is that draws me to Spiritborn over the other classes, and it reminds me a lot of when I played Rogue for the first time, because it was like the 5th class that I had played. I'd done all the other ones, and then I played Rogue, and I almost felt stupid, because I was like, the Rogue feels so much smoother and like faster than these other classes, and of course I started with Druid, so I'm used to being, like DatModz was saying, that lumbering guy would just say Taco Bell, like, you're so slow. And then you play the Rogue, and you're feeling fast. Like, I almost didn't like the Rogue because of how much smoother it felt to play. And that's kind of the experience I have with Spiritborn. And when I play the other classes, like I'm playing Sorcerer, and granted, you got teleport and stuff, but it's like the teleport that I'm doing on the Sorcerer is like the basic attack of the Spiritborn. Like you just move everywhere instantly. And I don't know how they're going to add the quality, maybe a new aspect or something, for each class. For me, it's the mobility and the time saving of like the gap closing that is so appealing to me about the class. And I feel like the major currency in ARPGs is kind of your time. So if they smooth out the mobility of the other classes, it would feel a lot better for me. But I don't know how you're going to do that and stuff like Druid. Like you're not just going to like teleport to them with Lightning Storm or something.
So for me, it's like a 2-part thing, right? The first part is definitely that the mobility. Like in this kind of an ARPG, if you have like a very slow lethargic class, it almost never feels good. So there's so many ways to zip around that it feels really good. The other thing for me is the Spiritborn. You're constantly sitting there when you're making a build, and there's so many great things that you're trying to go for, and you can't get them all. So you're sitting there and you're like, all right, well, I would really like to build Resolve. Can I do that while building Ferocity? And I would really like to get these Jaguar or these Eagle passives. And then I have the option to make my skills Jaguar or Eagle. But if I do that, then I'm going to have to give up this one thing. So it's a fun problem to solve. It's like you're like a kid in the candy store. There's like 30 candies and you can have 5 of them. So you're sitting there. I'm like, all right, how do I get the 5 best combination of candies before I walk out of here? And that's where the theory crafting like gets really fun. And another cool thing about the theory crafting of Spiritborn, which again goes to like the polish, is it's not always just stacking up the damage and making a number go up. Like, oh, your skills are now basic skills, and now if you stack this other thing that you probably weren't stacking, now you're way stronger. So it actually changes the way that you might approach it. You would never in a million years stack life and barrier to do damage. But now all of a sudden you can if you pick this Paragon board. So just the idea of making your build is more fun than all the other classes for me, in addition to the movement that DM pointed out.
I think one point to add here is that also just the late game scaling feels much improved compared to many other builds because of that. Because certain stats, both, like for example, you have like an ancestral item and you have dexterity and life on it, or you have dexterity and armor on it, and you have like unyielding hits aspect that gives you more damage with more armor. So you increase the damage in separate ways at the same time while also building your defenses. So it just kind of like feels you upgrade your character way more than normal when you get good gear. And that feels really nice. It kind of keeps you motivated to grind.
Kind of hope they take that same concept for the Sorcerer. Like I was trying to mess around with the mythic unique they have, and the staff is kind of dog, because the mythic unique stack you get, I get Conduit Shrine, yay. but you get so much resistance when you stack with Tyrios. It'd be kind of cool if the intelligence gives you res too. It'd be kind of cool if they did like a damage stacking sorcerer based upon how much overcapped resistance you have. They could kind of take the same concept across the other classes.
Yep.
Yeah, it would fit very well with the class, right? So they could not every build should be like that, I think, but it would be a nice concept to introduce, I think, right? You can do something with dodge on rogue or whatever. But it doesn't always have to be like convert defense into offense. It's just that in general the scaling is improved, right? Because you have these multiple scalars and not just, okay, more main start, a bit more crit, and that's basically about it, or so, maybe an extra skill rank. But there's like even more than that, and you just kind of like feel the power progression as you go. And that is kind of the cool part about it, I think. It's like, as Rax described, there is like a future for many of those builds. The only build that doesn't have a future is Razor Wings, I guess. That might need some looking at. But yeah, other than that, you can do many fun things on the class right now. So that's really cool.
I mean, another thing that they can do is, so I like DM's idea, and DM's idea is essentially taking the idea that they had and just slightly changing it for each of the other class buffs and pasting it in again. But then again, it's like the same idea. But I would love to see Blizzard come up with more entirely new ideas. So this idea right now is take the defensive layer, stack it really high, and then it gives you maybe some offensive bonus. But one thing I like about PoE's itemization is something like Lightning Coil, right? Lightning Coil, it like converts your some of your damage to lightning damage or something, and then it has like minus 70 lightning res or something. So then if you can solve that, maybe you can avoid you can like change the elements that you're stacking entirely. So like, oh, you're supposed to play with 1,000 armor, but this class can now completely bypass using armor at all by just stacking, again, resistances to the moon. So I'd like to constantly challenge Blizzard. This is a great idea that you put it in Spiritborn. As DM said, if you copy and paste it into the other classes, that would be cool. But I don't think that would be as cool as if you keep coming up with new ideas of ways that we could completely build it differently, like not building armor at all.
I like that concept, but do you think Blizzard wants that type of complexity to Diablo 4 with what we've seen? I guess it had gotten more complex over time, and I've noticed more people actually having issues digesting all the different systems, right? Because the end game loop is more expansive now. You have different ways to focus farm. You have more stacking stuff. You have like the tempering, the masterworking, and I would say Diablo 4 has become more build reliant in the more recent seasons, right? You think Blizzard wants to actually like make the game a lot more complex, where you have all these additional defensive options and mitigation options? It's definitely fun as a theory crafter for sure, having more complex systems. But how far to the moon do you think they want to take it?
I think that they don't want that because they actively say it all the time that they don't want it.
Yeah.
But what I would point to is they keep saying that they don't want it. They keep saying that they don't want to make it complicated. They don't want to make the skill tree. They don't want to expand it. They've actively said point blank they don't want the game to be PoE. I don't want the game to be PoE either because we have PoE for PoE. I don't want them to make Diablo 4 a copycat of another game. I want it to be its own entity. But my counter to that would be is all the times that they make the game more complicated seem to be universally liked. For example, we used to just click upgrade 4 times on the blacksmith, and that was our upgrade system. Now we have masterworking and tempering. Now people have had issues with masterworking and tempering, but it wasn't that we had more issues with upgrading our items. It's that tempering bricked your character all the time and acquiring the masterworking materials was bad. It was a bunch of details about it that could have been fixed. Before, I thought the best class to theory craft on was Druid, because you have the tornado build and all of a sudden they had the Tempest Roar or whatever, and now all of a sudden you're a werewolf and you move at the speed of light and you're pentakilling the entire team when you get finally all of these uniques. That was fun, and that is the only thing that was even close to the Spiritborn, which is most of people's favorite thing. So I would challenge Blizzard's mentality and say, I know you don't want to make PoE, but every time you make it a little bit more complicated and give us some options and make it cool, it seems to go well for you. So why don't you do it some more? That would be my counter to that.
I think, like looking at especially Spiritborn, we already see that a lot. That the Spiritborn is a lot more complex. You know, you talked about this earlier. They have like these 30 candies. You pick 5 of them. You have to find the right combo. And actually doing that, if you really want to math it out to like the last detail, it does take quite a while to even get to that conclusion. That is actually like, let's say, the truth compared to many other builds and other classes that are like way more simplistic. Like, okay, you have like your 1 or 2 important aspects that you put in every build on every class, and then you have like your skill tree looks very similar in many cases, and the Paragon builds look very similar. But on Spiritborn, this is not always really the case, especially when it comes to the aspect choices and then how you go about like stacking the stats on your gear, like the armor stacking versus the overpower. I get questions about this all the time. Which one is better? Do you want to play Banished Lords? Do you want to play Unyielding Hits? And that suddenly changes like 2 or 3 other things in the build as well. And I think that's actually really cool about it. And like all these Spirit Hall choices that you can make to like get certain effects one way or another. You can use the Harmony Helm to get more of your tags on your skills, and then you can use more passives. So there is a lot of this like complexity built in. And I think it's not like overly complex to the point where everyone needs to know everything, and you has to like sit there and like calculate stuff for hours. If you are not really like a theory crafter like myself, for example, it's fine to just like throw something on and have fun with it. But if you want to get down to like the last details, there is actually a lot of complexity already involved in the Spiritborn. And I don't see this as a downside at all for the game. I think a lot of people still have fun with the Spiritborn, not even looking at guides at all, and they're gonna be fine anyway, because stuff just kind of works. But there's always like this, can do this way, you can do that way, and as long as people don't kind of like have too much redundancy, or just like take stuff that doesn't actually function, right? They have like eagle passes, but they don't have an eagle tag. If they're like doing such mistakes, then okay, that's a problem. But if they're like kind of doing any kind of synergistic stuff, it still works. And I think that's really cool about how Spiritborn was designed. So that was a huge plus for me.
Yeah, we have been talking mostly about some of the strong suits of Spiritborn. One thing we haven't talked about is some of the downside to Spiritborn. And for me so far, especially for the Hall option, Centipede just doesn't really seem to have a lot of practical uses. So hopefully they end up revamping Centipede, because right, Jaguar and Gorilla and your bird all have a lot of uses, and Centipede kind of just feels like it's lacking behind in terms of Spirit Hall options, where most of the times you won't even consider it. But I guess it also has to do with like what Scourge healing too, right? Everyone just picks Scourge.
Yeah, I guess that it's definitely like you have the damage like Django Hall primary, and the Gorilla gives you the barrier, which is kind of cool and gives you like easy access to other stuff. Centipede doesn't really have like enough like power behind it, I guess, in like passives and like the effect itself, right? I do like the Centipede secondary though for the healing. I like running that on the Jackham Shell builds, for example. But this is like a specialty that mostly the poison builds do, I think.
When I was playing the early access, the leveling up was actually pretty tough. Where you didn't have any of your renown, and you didn't exactly know what you were doing, so you're just throwing different stuff there. And I was playing on even hard difficulties. Some of the bosses just straight up killed me, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is actually difficult. I have nothing, and I'm down 10 skill points." And I'm like, "All right, let's look at the Centipede. Okay, the Centipede thing, I'm playing Centipede, I'm playing Poison. I'm going to go all healing, and maybe I can just out-heal anything." But then when I tried other things, like I tried Gorilla, you just smash and you get a barrier, it seemed way more effective. I have not seen, I can't remember a very effective way ever on any build. Maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong. In Diablo 4, where just regenerating life was the way to stay alive. And it's always about just mitigating the damage before it ever arrives to you. It's all about capping your resistances and putting a barrier on. So I think it's going to be difficult. Like Woody pointed out, Jacinth's Shell, that's a good situation, like where it's actually draining you to try to counteract it. But people, I think, just get anxiety playing that armor anyway, even if they're not playing hardcore. Just to see the constant drain by you playing the game, it's just like an anxiety thing. So I agree with Mods. I think it's going to be difficult for me to believe that healing your life is the way is the way forward. It usually, the only thing that can kill you in the game is when you get to the pit or you fight an uber boss and you have 4 stacks and they one-shot you anyway. Like, what life are you going to regenerate from what hit to survive?
Damage mitigation definitely king, and we still have life per second stats on gear that you always end up getting greater affixes on.
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's still no way to like. I'm surprised they haven't done more things like where you actually scale damage with life per second or something, or some life per gen stat at some point in time.
Well, there is bitter medicine. What do you guys think about that?
It's always the life per second rolls, and it's always greater affix plus 75 fire res. It's like I'm never gonna use this, man. It's just instantly gone.
Wait, you don't like 13 life every 5 seconds as a greater affix?
No, it's not doing it for me. I mean, maybe I just need to get good, but I just salvage it, man.
How about you combine it with your greater affix healing received?
So what is that, like 17 life per 5? That's my favorite number.
Speaking of gear, what's your guys' take on if you get a quad roll unique item, the passive should be maxed out too? I've seen that idea thrown around.
Well, that's actually a topic I have for later, but we can discuss it now.
Well, all I can say is I hate the current system. Every time I got a quad roll Rod of Keck W minimum power. It's not. I'm just like how? Why is this possible? Like, in general, whenever I hear a suggestion to make Diablo 4 easier, like, that's what keeps me up at night. That's me under my blanket. Like, I'm scared that Diablo 4 is going to get any easier or any simpler. But that particular instance where you find the quad GA and it's just a piece of shit, that shouldn't be possible. It's kind of the same argument that everyone's having. I love the fact that I never thought that this would happen, never even dreamed of this, that they would actually make the Codex of Power like an achievement, right? I have like 8 max powers in my entire thing. I like the fact that it's a little bit of a journey, but you get the greater affixes and they have the 5x or the 5 extra levels tacked onto it, and then you're still dropping the minimum power from the base legendary. I'm just like, why is this even possible? And it also makes finding like the perfect greater affix pretty much impossible. So I think both of those systems, I kind of put them hand in hand. I think the current iteration has got to change. How much you buff it by, I'm not sure. But in general, I'm not in favor of buffing Diablo 4 at all. But these are like 2 instances where I think it needs it.
Yeah. I'm not really a big fan of guaranteeing perfect stuff. I'm more of a fan of being able to adjust your items, like where there's just like more items of value that drop and you could use those to manipulate items. I guess that leans more into PoE, but I've always been a fan of that, right? Where you have, and then it also kind of builds up the marketplace too, right? Because we're seeing a lot more trading in Diablo 4 now. So I would like for example, like have like a divine orb type item, right? Where there's something that, it's a rare drop. You get like a 3 greater affix, 4 greater affix item, and you're going to save it for that. And then you can re-roll it and have a chance to roll close to max in case you get a mineral item, right? And then it also adds more to the economy too. So you could like trade those scarce items just for other runes or materials or gold.
Yeah,
agree.
I do agree with that as well. Like, I'm not really bothered by this, like, okay, 4GA, terrible affix. Like, it doesn't really bother me, but I can understand that other people are very upset when this happens. And then I get people in my chat that ask me, hey, can I use this 3GA Capeleke that has 1.2%? And I say, no, you cannot use. You use a non-ancestral, please. You know, this is just how it goes, right? And in that case, yeah, it would be cool. Like, not to like just make it like a primal, like in the free. I think that would be boring. But something like what Mod suggested, like give us an option. There was like, for example, this idea floating around. You use the Mythic Spark and you can reroll your unique ones or something. I don't know, something like that. I think it would be badass. It's like you find this item and it's like almost there, and you hold on to it, and eventually you're gonna get that roll, and it's gonna feel good when you get it, right? And you can actually work towards it if you don't. So that's the cool part about it, I think, and we should rather go for something like this.
Yeah. And the other thing that I definitely don't like right now is they are like adding more currency in the game, and then you really feel this problem if you're a trader. Having to use third-party tools in Discord to trade feels so bad. Like, it kills your immersion. You have like a website up, You're getting spammed with messages. People are trying to scam you. You're getting lowballed nonstop. Just having like an in-game marketplace would just really increase your quality of life in the game. Even just like have a thematic bazaar, right? If they really want to like keep the Diablo feel, like just put like an area there where you could like be social. Like people could look at your transmogs, right? And you could just like trade easier with like some NPC. Just have like maybe some material stuff. Maybe they can even make materials tradable, like rawhide, right? Like, oh man, I got a bunch of extra rawhide. I could throw it up in this bazaar, right? You get iron chunks, you throw up iron chunks, right? You get gold for iron chunks. So I feel like there's opportunity there. The original Diablo 3 auction house, I actually liked it. I just didn't like the real money portion. You remember when they removed it? And then they kind of like had the hyper focus on like solo self-bound and group bound stuff. But the original D3 auction house wasn't too bad. It just needed polish. You just weren't able to like, you remember, like search all your affixes originally. So you had to like come up with create a combination like 3 affixes to find the good gear. It's felt like relying on the auction house too to upgrade. But I feel like a marketplace could really help Diablo 4. At least within its current state.
I think it's a massive mistake to not have an auction house or a marketplace. When I was in Seattle and I was testing the Spiritborn, I had a chance to interview Brent, and awesome guy. So glad that he's in charge of the expansion. He's going to do great things. Love that guy. I asked him, any plans for a marketplace? And he said, really no, that's not on our radar. I think it's a huge mistake. Kind of like what Mods is alluding to. People get it in their mind that the Diablo 3 real money auction house ruined Diablo 3. Fine. Like, really no argument there. But that has almost no correlation to an auction house. An auction house, just where you can trade, thrives in so many games. It thrives in WoW. They just implemented it in last Epoch. They absolutely love it. PoE just implemented it in Boat League. I think it might have been the greatest addition that they've ever added in the game ever. I'm kind of new. I've only played for like 1.5 years, but I absolutely love it. It's just a huge mistake. You've got to put it against. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. You got to put it in the game. And I think Mods hit it perfectly. When you have to transfer out of the game to play your game, people hate that. That's like one of people's biggest complaints about PoE. My voice is dying, my bad. One of the biggest complaints about PoE is you have to have like 10 things open, not just your guide, but all the bulk selling, this or that to even play. And the marketplace, of course, they just implemented, is helping with that. But I'm so on board with adding this. I think it's a huge mistake to not have it in the game.
I'm hoping my copium take on it is that they're going to implement it. They're just waiting to solve like the dupe issues that are happening before they do it. Because from my understanding, I believe we've had a duplication issue every season.
Wait, which of the dupe issues are we talking about? Yeah, we have many at this point.
All of them, brother.
Oh man, I can't believe that trading is still enabled actually at this stage in the season. It's wild. Like, how is that possible? I was expecting it 1 week ago to be disabled, and we're still here. It's crazy.
Yeah, I saw like something on Billy, and they're duping live on stream, and they're just giving away perfect 4 great graphics items. They're like, oh, you guys want a 4 great graphics rod? Here you go. Everyone gets one. It's wild. But it's not even just the duping, even like all just the exploits, like the new Dustsite one with like nightmare dungeons and stuff like that, like where you're getting a lot more materials than what we had Infernal Horde too, like picking up 1 mat at a time and turn off your pet and running back and forth. It's like such silly things, right?
Yeah.
But I guess this what makes Diablo. Diablo's always been this way. Every Diablo game has been full of these exploits and hacks and stuff like that. And they're running Diablo 2 when people would dupe, and then you'd have to perm your items before you trade them. Like, don't leave the game yet. Make sure to perm them. And that's kind of like Diablo 4 right now. It's not good though, but it's it definitely
we can talk about the bugs
with past Diablo games. Yeah.
I have that on my list as well. There's like more stuff to discuss, I guess.
Okay,
I want to go back to the topic that Rex mentioned, which is the aspects. The ancestral aspects roll higher. A lot of people are actually confused about that, and they think that their codex is bugged or something because they find a non-ancestral with a maximum roll, and then they salvage it, and they think, oh, now I have the maximum, just like how it worked before. But now there is actually ancestral tier aspects that roll even higher than that. And what do you think about that new system, actually? So let's talk about that. And outside of like, okay, moaning, I don't have everything maxed out by week 2. Let's just hear what you guys think about the system.
Okay, so I'll give you my take. I don't mind additional chases for things. Typically, I can find it quite enjoyable chasing mythic uniques. I think is like I like the dopamine and the gamba in the games, so it's enjoyable for me. I will say that there's times when it feels a little bit needless or not as exciting as others, and in my opinion, this is one of those times where instead of it feeling like an additional layer of achievement and like, oh, I finally got the greater FX one, I'm more annoyed than I am excited by the potential. So for me, I don't have a solution to it. Maybe they just put them back to Universal like it was. I didn't really feel like this is one of the situations where more depth was needed. As DatModz was saying earlier, I completely agree with the take that sometimes, opportunities arise for you have a need for something, for like re-rolling the greater affix maybe with a spark or something. You can add new currency like Divine Orb. Sometimes there's opportunities that arise for more depth out of the mechanics of the games. It doesn't feel like one of those opportunities to me where we can get more enjoyable progression depth by making like another tier of aspect. I feel like aspects were kind of fine how they were, to be honest.
So for me, oh, sorry,
No,
go,
no,
Rax.
no. Go ahead.
Okay. So for me, I think the biggest issue with the new system is just the way information is displayed in the tooltip. It's just really confusing. And that's where Blizzard has always struggled with Diablo 4 is conveying information to the player, even though the game's not overly complex, right? So they just kind of like, they need to let players know a base legendary item can only roll, 16 out of 21. And then ancestral items roll like the max tier. And I think if they want to keep the current system, there's a pretty easy solution. If you get an ancestral item, it can't roll within the legendary tier, right? So it only rolls at the greater end of that tier. And then you still have value within the aspects, right? And then you can also trade them, right? A lot of people are trading in the game. They enjoy trading. If they get like a duplicate item, they get to sell it off, give it to their friend. Another problem is if you have a max tier aspect already and you get another one, there's no way to know you already have that aspect. So you just salvage it by mistake and you just threw away 40 billion gold. So I think currently with the system they have,
million on hardcore.
yeah, 150 million on hard, where you're just trading with Oogie Boogie. That's it. Oh, hey, Oogie, you want this item?
Yeah,
So
that's basically what I did today.
So
but, yeah, I think the biggest weak point is just how they're displaying information.
I was literally going to say exactly what Moz just said. So the idea of adding a chase, as DM pointed out, they're the 5 extra tiers for Ancestral. The base idea there is perfect. Exactly what DM said. We have a problem communicating, displaying the information to the person. I said this in the early access. I wasn't the only one. A couple people said this. When you have the base item, not ancestral, show that it's perfect, they salvage it, and then all of a sudden their codex isn't perfect because the person needs to understand that there's 2 different tiers within it. That is 1,000 times more confusing than you don't even have to say anything about the non-ancestrals. The non-ancestrals just never get to 21, and you're whatever, it's like 16 and then 21 plus 5. It just never gets to 21. The max you can get is 16, and that's it. And you could just put a note on Ancestrals somewhere that Ancestrals are the only ones that can get max power. Now, Mods' idea, I think they have to do something like that. They could do exactly what he said. They could increase the Ancestral where the minimum value is the top end of the legendary. They could do that. If they want to make it a little bit more of a chase, they could just truncate out like 50% of the tier of the legendary power, and that would still be decent, and that would give you a little bit more to chase, because we do need more things to chase in Diablo 4. Like, we can get into it later. Like, when we talk about the raids, I have a rant prepared for that. But
Dungeon experience.
Yeah, it's like it's a common theme that the base idea is fine. The base idea for tempering was fine. The base idea for masterworking is fine. But then some of the little details about how it works for the player feel so bad that people, they just hate the entire system. But really, the entire system isn't bad. It's just the details.
I agree with that. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the new ancestral aspects system. And yeah, I see that point that it's like very hard to get them. Like, I kind of feel like I've decked out like 5 different builds and I'm still chasing some of the aspects, which on one hand is cool because every time I find an ancestral, I can still, hope for that big drop, right? And they're really valuable if you want to trade it to someone. So I think that's cool, but yeah, making it maybe a bit easier, communicating it better would be nice. I really hope that they're not gonna remove the system with the ancestrals. I think they should keep that. But yeah, make the black tutors better. Like Rax said, just don't max out the non-ancestrals and maybe truncate, some of the lower tiers and on the ancestrals, and that's it. I think that could be like some tweaks here, and it would be a really good solution. What do you guys think about uniques though? Like maybe this is like last topic in aspects and uniques. So unique drop rates. We talked about like 3GA Kapeleke or something. Like how do you like that in general? With like how do you acquire your items from the boss rollers? How often do you get the good drops? Like decking out the character. Like what do you think about that in general? The pace, I guess.
I don't have too many huge complaints. If I like, none of this feedback is really severe. If I was to give like some more minor feedback, I would say the mythic unique drops on the bosses, they're lower than I thought they would be in T4. Now I've seen the math on it. It's supposed to be like 2 or 3% on T4. My experience, I think if you actually add it up, would be a lot lower than that. So maybe I've just been unlucky. But I think people expected to see a few more mythic uniques during all the kills. One thing that surprised me at the beginning of the season is how strong gambling seemed to be. I thought the absolute best way to gear up, bar none, was just to do the pit, get some mobiles, and just spam gamble for quarterstaffs. You will get a Rod of Keck W almost instantly. Do a couple more runs, and you will get an ancestral one. And so I thought that in the beginning it might be a little bit too overpowered, but then I thought about like how bad gambling was before, and I'm like, well, would I rather have gambling be as worthless as it was or as useful as it is now? And I guess I'd rather have it more useful. So I don't have any like super strong opinions here. I think in general, the item hunt, especially as you said, Woody, with the ancestrals and the different ranges, it has gotten better. And maybe it's just because like we're veterans of Diablo, but you can assemble a build at light speed still. I just don't have the skills. I don't have the knowledge to do this in PoE. I'm constantly grinding. I'm constantly looking for stuff. There's always super major upgrades that I'm missing unless I'm doing Flub Guns build and I'm farming a mirror a day. I just can't reach it, and that keeps me really, really hungry. My hunger is satiated in Diablo 4 very, very quickly, but I still think that their system is improving. I think that it's better.
I want to preface this by saying I'm a pretty sweaty grinder, but I actually like the rarity of the 2-3-4 greater epic stuff. Because in order to get a functional build, you don't need that at all, right? You just have a combination of legendary and ancestral. But I like that the 3-4 greater epic stuff is more rare. It's kind of like depreciate a little bit because all the dupes and stuff going on. But since we have like a more robust endgame loop, right? And that's actually a huge thing I'm a fan of nowadays. You're not just doing Nightmare Dungeons and Hell Tides all the time. Basically, every piece of content almost had the practical use, especially with opals. Hopefully, they bring back opals next season. They don't cut them. Realm Walker needs some changes, but I think they should just add like some more ability to like focus farm specific stuff and juice it up. Like, the purveyor levels that you guys already talked about. I like the new purveyor, right? It's really, really good for focus targeting stuff. So yeah, I think just add additional ways to get those good items instead of only standing in boss rotas all day long. But I think some people will get demotivated when they're just sitting there killing Duriel 100 times, and then they go to Andariel 100 times, right? And they don't get mythic items, right? And they're not getting a lot of legendaries. Yeah, so I think just moving some of that loot to different sources, and then maybe buffing the base ancestral drop rate, but then keeping like 2-3-4 greater epic stuff a little more rare, so at least those exciting moments would be better. So like more people could get their 800 level gear, but then still have the 2-3-4 greater epic stuff a little more rare, so it's an exciting moment. You know what I mean? So it appeals to kind of like the casual, but if you're a grinder and you're trying to get that 4 greater epics piece, it'll be exciting, powerful moment.
What do you think about the idea that there's a higher chance to get uniques with more stars outside of bosses? because they're much more rare.
I
Like,
like,
you know, when you're grinding pit or something, or gambling or something, like you just get uniques like way slower than just like, you know, farming Duriel, farming Vashan or whatever, right? Like you can just like chain them over and over, and even then it's so rare to see 2 or 3 or 4 GAs, right, on like any item. So what do you think about that?
I think moving item upgrades out of boss rotations will make Diablo 4 more fun. So anything like that, like as Mod said, you don't need these. You don't need 2 or 3 or 4 stars. You can go to Duriel, and he is going to give you or whichever boss specifically you need. You can pick up the unique that you need, and you can pick up an ancestral version of it. You can even get the right greater affix with a decent power. That's very reasonable, even for a casual to get. But these rare chase items, I think, need to be moved out of the boss rotations. So whatever way they want to do that, exactly as Woody said, I would be very in favor for it. One thing that I don't really do much anymore is I don't do much Helltide. I really don't have a reason to go there. I can get all the boss mats from the Kurast Undercity, for example. But I think Helltide is fun. I think if Blizzard motivated me to go kill some Blood Maidens, to go open like 10 chests a day or something, I'm not saying daily quests. If you say that, then the people get out their pitchforks. And then they say it's an MMO. They get really upset. But if you motivate me to stop standing and killing Duriel and do something else, I will enjoy the game more.
Yes.
I wouldn't mind the Helltide having instead of targeted gear slots, like targeted crafting material slots. Maybe you just move Helltide into material farming, so it's like I can open a iron chunk chest, and I'm just going to get a shitload of iron chunks or something like that, and have Helltide maybe be like your crafting material area. In terms of regard of your question about the unique item drop, I'm okay with having more uniques drop like elsewhere outside of the boss as well. I think a lot of people don't like seeing they're spamming the bosses. I, however, am on Mod side about like I would not actually want an increase in rarity in terms of stars, because for me the real mythic items in the game are like a triple greater affix ancestral item or a quad greater affix unique item. I feel like mythics are like you can, you know, realistically there's a pathway to get one. You can even craft one. Now we have like runes, you can randomize one and you can get a guarantee. Everyone can kill Torment 1 Lilith. Like it's not that hard, right? So you can get these sparks and you can craft these things. So the real chase items are like triple greater affix. And I don't know how much we really want to like everyone can get double and triple of everything, because you want to have something that at least does have super excitement when it drops. Like I just got really lucky. And the more that we make like the really lucky stuff ultra common, we're actually like removing a lot of the potential higher excitement from it. And you might be like, well, I want to have my build as strong as possible. It's like, that's fine. But like the extra little percentage that you get from like, you know, one more greater affix row isn't really that huge of a deal depending upon the item. And you kind of need something to differentiate the builds, or else everyone's got, you know, the exact same item, the exact same character. I mean, we're seeing that right now with Spiritborn. Everyone's running the same thing and people are already annoyed by it. So, you know, let there be some ceiling.
So I completely agree. I completely agree with DM that we don't want it to be like any easier to acquire. We don't want to lower the dopamine. I just think they need a solution to, I think Woody brought it up or Mods brought it up, to the problem of, okay, so you want to get the mythic uniques and you want to get the quad GAs. Those are the chase items. They both drop from the same thing. You go do Duriel, because he's the one that's dropping you the pile of uniques. So you get so many more rolls on the slot machine. That's my issue. The issue, my issue is not that I necessarily want you to make it more common. I need a solution where to get it, I don't just keep doing Duriel. So if we can do both of those at the same time, if there's a solution that does both of those at the same time, excellent. I'm just sick of killing Duriel 500 times a day.
I totally agree with that. And I think another issue that comes with the both rotas that we can discuss is also that both rotas are just so valuable for not just the uniques, but for almost everything. Especially from a hardcore perspective, I can't really trade to get gold. The both rotas are by far the best way to get gold. You just vendor all of the uniques, you salvage the ancestrals, you get a ton of iron chunks, a ton of rawhide, You get all the gold. This is where you get everything, you know, and I get tons of items I can give to my viewers or
And the
sell to my
legendary
viewers or whatever,
runes.
right? And I get
Yeah.
the runes as well. Yeah, exactly. The boss runes are just so much more valuable than everything else for almost everything they can get outside of like legendaries. I really like that they removed legendary drops from the bosses. It's like, yeah, some people were moaning about this and I say, oh man, I got so much loot from the boss orders. Yeah, because you were chilling in the Duri rotations all day long, every day. Yeah, of course you get lots of your loot there, but do we want that? And the answer for me is no. You know, I want to be done with Duriel Hell. You know I play a season and I go into Duriel Hell, I get my mythics, and then I want to leave Duriel Hell, you know, until next season. You know, I can stomach it so much, and then no more. Please leave me alone, you know. I have my mythics, you know, and I don't want to go back there, but I have to because there's mods, there's gold, there's everything. It's just so good. Even I don't even want the mythics anymore. I have 20 mythics in my stash. What am I gonna do with them? You know, like I have everything. I have backups of everything on hardcore. Like who cares? So it's like I don't want to go there, right? After I've paid my Duriel tax, you know, I pay my tax, I know it, and then I want to go do other stuff, and I can't. So that really bothers me.
Yeah, and like
Kind of like the loot pinata.
and again, so if I'm trying to put on my game designing hat, it's not that the final pinnacle boss of a game cannot have the best loot table. I would argue the opposite. The final pinnacle boss of a game should have the best loot. The problem is with the way that the game is currently set up, we're killing Duriel 500 times a day. That's the problem. He's way too accessible. He's way too free. If you want to keep Duriel's loot table so strong, then it needs to be much harder to fight Duriel, either to kill him or to be able to open him. Now, duping, RMT, all these other things completely ruin the economy. People find a 3GA Rod of KEKW. They sell it for whatever, 20 billion gold. 20 billion gold buys you Duriel runs for a week. And when you're done with that week of Duriel runs, especially sharing it with your friends, one person gets a godly drop. You've paid for another week of Duriel runs where he just dies in one hit. So I don't want Blizzard to get the idea of, oh, people hate it when our final bosses have great loot tables. No, I hate it when they die in one hit, and I can get the mats to kill them 500 times a day pretty easily. People say, oh, Rax, that's just because you play all day. No, you could do it with a pretty low playtime. All you got to do is trade the good stuff that you find and buy Duriel mats.
And I think the bigger problem is just that, you know, you go for the bosses for a specific purpose. Either get your unique for your build, or get a better one of that, or you get a mythic, right? And I don't want the bosses to have all this other stuff, you know. I want to go there, get my thing, and leave. And that's it, you know. That's basically my impression about it. Sorry, Dan.
Oh man, I'm kind of like, I got a little bit of a different take. I feel like doing the boss, like I'm not sitting here Omega min-maxing where I have 500 billion mats. Like I'll get some mats, like, oh, I get to kill a Durio, and then like, oh, loot pinata, so I'll go kill, you know, a Durio real quick, and be like, oh, what do I get? Shiny, and then I kind of gotta go farm the mats again. I know we can do a billion of them with viewers and stuff and all that, but like, I don't have like the issue where I want to leave it. Like for me, the bosses are the part that are actually kind of fun. To be honest, I agree that they're getting one hit right now, but I kind of feel like that's a Spiritborn problem. Like if I go in there with my Dance of Knives Rogue, like, you know, the Duriel fights, it's a little bit of a fight. You know, I can't one shot them, at least not yet.
Yeah, I mean-
Well, one shot Duriel or kick. How about that? Because that's how the rotas really work. No, it's like,
Yeah.
someone is gonna one shot it. So
I mean,
if you do it alone, okay, I get it, but
that is a solution, right? That is one of the solutions that they could do where, and maybe it will happen when they fix the bugs of Spiritborn. Maybe the Spiritborn builds, maybe they get to a point where you don't one-shot Torment for Duriel and it is an actual fight. I mean, people are going to disagree, hard disagree with me here. I think the most fun Tormented boss fights are the hardest ones to fight. Like, if you have to actually fight them, the hardest bosses are Beast in Ice and Dariel. I remember on Softcore on day 2, we went to T4 Beast in Ice, and we summoned him, and we probably died 20 times because we had to like do his little waves like 6 times over just to get a kill because we were so weak. And that was the most fun I had the entire season. So yeah, that's definitely a solution. If the bug fixes come in and Duriel isn't free, the fun is going to go way up.
Well, realistically, what happens is they make the bosses hard. You just go to Torment 3 and farm it there at like 20% less efficiency and one shot on Torment 3. So that's really what's going to happen.
Exactly.
So I don't think you can do that. So it's always going to be a one-shot fest no matter what. And the question is just how much do we have to do it? And I think right now it's way too much. It's mostly because, not so much because the mythic drop rate is low, but because the bosses are just so good in everything else, like we have like the rune tribute for Undercity, for example, and you go there and then you get like magic runes, and okay, how are you ever going to craft your shroud or your shako when you don't get any legendary runes? Where do you get the legendary runes? From the bosses. Go kill the bosses, you get legendary runes. I answer that question every day 1,000 times. Go kill the bosses. This is where I get your runes. And this is the only way to farm them. There's no other way to farm legendary runes because the Kuros Undercity is trash for it. It only gives you the blue ones. So it's like, why does it exist? Why do we only have that? I think it's like just too much of a focus.
Yeah, true.
I think that's just a balancing adjustment. There's the Curious City, the good addition. It just still needs a little bit of an overhaul, especially like how people are just putting it down to T1 to farm a bunch of Monty runes, right? You can people are making like 10 billion gold an hour farming Monty runes like day one of Shroud on Torrent 1 difficulty, and no one knew about it, but it was so much gold. But now the cat's out of the bag and people know about it. Well, maybe not everyone knows about it, but they're like, oh, how to get Monty runes. Lower your difficulty, get less rarity multiplier, and just farm on T1.
Softcore strats, man. Okay, but
yeah,
it sounds funny, yeah. But you can talk about the Undercity in general and like the new content. So let's talk about Undercity and then Citadel, and then we'll see about the rest. So what do you guys think in general about the Undercity and the purposes it serves, and what else should be improved?
I love the new Undercity. Yeah, you go first, Darth.
Nope. I was just gonna say, cool concept. I mean, I like the concept of it. I don't find myself farming it that often, to be honest with you, because the kind of what Woody's saying, like I just do bosses or do the pip for glyph. But I mean, I like the concept of it. I think it's fun.
No, I love the tributes. I do think it needs a little bit of a little makeover, a little revamp. But I love being able to target farm. You could do like Rhoda's there. You could go solo if you want. I like the time attack. You don't have to click pylon. It's like almost a better gauntlet, essentially. My biggest pet peeve with it is like when you put the bargains on, right? You attach like some of their multiplier where you want like more defensive aspects. And then you have like the legendary ones, like where you get like plus ranks of skills, your 5 and your 50 million gold option. Then you have your unique tributes where it's like a 50-50 chance of getting mythic items, which is pretty fun. But the downside is I kind of wish you could put more bargains on the tributes to like adjust the difficulty and also the reward structure. So like, how like it'll be an expenditure for your materials, but then also you'll be able to get more loot that way. You know what I mean? So like if you're doing like a masterworking tribute or you're doing like a legendary tribute or a unique tribute, you could stack on more bargains. But I think they also have to put in more options into the game too. So you're basically able to juice up your tribute, maybe make it so it's more time sensitive. You don't have much time to do your objectives. Maybe the mobs have more health, more damage. Then you just get more rewards from the final chest. So I think there's a lot where they could build on that system and make it even more lucrative. And then to the point previously that we had where we spend too much time in boss runs, it could be another alternative for farming there. And still a legendary and the unique tributes kind of feel like they have too low of a drop rate, even after the buffs.
Yeah, a lot. I've actually saved all of my unique tributes. I still have them, but the common feedback that I get is when they run them, they were expecting much better loot than they got. I agree with Mods. Like there can be some fine tuning here with the rewards. Maybe this is one of the levers that you pull to get us out of the boss rotations having all of the best loot. For me, the Kuros Undercity is like a little bit of a better version of the Gauntlet. Didn't like the Gauntlet at all. I like this more. I like the time attack thing. For me, the Kuros Undercity is just fine. I don't love it. I don't hate it. The thing for me that is missing is I'm missing variance. So one thing that I loved, let's use Lost Ark as an example. every day you had to do your chaos dungeons. And one of the cool things that I loved about chaos dungeons is not so different from the Kuros Thunder City, kind of like a little time attack, 3-level wave thing, clear it out. But you could spawn the gold portals or the red portals. Now, when you actually went in them, there really wasn't much to do. You just kill a boss. But when that would happen, you just like hit the jackpot, and it was such a big deal because those materials that you got were so insanely valuable. What do we have as variance here in Kuros Undercity? Well, sometimes that goblin thing spawns, and sometimes the boss spawns, and I get another chest. That is kind of something, but I'm really missing, not just in the Kuros Undercity, but in some of the other game modes, I'm missing where Blizzard really throws me a curveball, where something really, really exciting happens that doesn't happen too often. I wish they would inject more variance and more dopamine in these things. I don't mind doing the time attack Kuros City. I don't mind the reward structure currently. I agree with mods. It could be a lot better. I agree it could be a solution to kind of take away a little bit from the boss rotations. But I find myself it's difficult to be, yeah, Kuros Undercity. It's just okay to me.
It's kind of how I feel about it as well, I gotta say. Like, I kind of like the general concept, but it's like always the same. Like, the run is always the same, no matter what bargains I put and what turbos I put. And the tribute doesn't add like an extra boss somewhere, or like some extra elites, or like some environmental effect, or I don't know what. There could be something going on. Maybe a random extra level that you can get. Maybe just as not even something that is optional. Maybe like sometimes it just has 4 levels and there's like one super level that gives you like some extra reward at the end or something, right? It just pops up sometimes or not, or I don't know what. There could be like so much more stuff that they could implement. For me, the biggest gripe I have with Undercity is that the bargains just feel like really undertuned and not really worth it, especially if we're talking about the very valuable ones, like the amulet passive ranks, for example, which is extremely powerful, right? You can get a guaranteed passive on an amulet. So it's like the chase item of every build almost, right? So you want to get an amulet that has like maybe 2 passes, maybe 3 passes in some cases. And I feel like this is just not really worth it. At least when you don't have like infinite amount of gold from like software economy. And even if you do, I feel like the drop rates are just kind of bad from what I've seen and heard. And also like the other bargains, okay, you get a bit more offensive aspects, you get a bit more weapons, but I feel like just the targeting of certain loot is way too underwhelming. So that's like my impression of it. And I don't really want to run the Undercity to then get like 4 items at the end, and then they have a higher chance to be weapons. It's like, I can just run pit and gamble weapons. It's like, okay, I would have spent my stuff that I have too much of. It's a good concept, but it doesn't really lead me anywhere. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I think the bargains need the most tuning, and then, like Rax said, the variance is always good. Surprise aspects are always nice in ARPGs. And also, people hate Chaos Dungeons and Lost Ark. They absolutely hate them. They made it so you only have to do like 1 a day now. So it's kind of funny because I know you played a decent amount of Lost Ark, but not a lot. That was like one of the community's like least favorite thing. It was like they called it homework. Like log in to do homework every single day, two a day. But now you only have to do 1 a day. But yeah, getting the portals like that is a good suggestion. Like where you got like more randomness in the Kuros Undercity. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, just in case I didn't communicate, maybe I didn't communicate it correctly. I don't love doing chaos dungeons every day. I love when I do a chaos dungeon and I get the portal. I like the portal. That's what I like.
Okay. Yeah. DM, you want to chime in here?
I mean, I'm with DatModz take. I think juicy maps and PoE is one of my favorite things. I think the Undercity is very uniquely suited to be able to do that. It sort of seems what they're doing here. One of my favorite things about the expansion is that you are able to target farm things a little bit better than before. It kind of seemed like before you just do anything everywhere and you get whatever. And now it kind of seems you can target farm a little bit more, which for me is massively improved quality of life, at least. I think they could just take it a little bit further. So yeah, I agree with the bargains take. I think you improved specifically what you're trying to target farm. I also like the point where you're pointing about the amulets with the passive ranks. When I noticed that and the bargains. I was like, that's really cool and unique. And if I could like take that and maybe double, triple, quadruple the cost of it, or maybe insert something like a resplendent spark or some valuable materials that will maybe up the percentage or maybe be able to take multiple bargains. I think it's good bones is how I put it. I think it's a pretty good skeleton structure. I like it. I don't have any like major negatives to say about it. When I first was introduced to it during the early access, I was pleasantly surprised. I'm like, that's really cool. Like I was pretty positive, and I'm still pretty positive about it. You could just take it further, and I think it would be even better. I got pee. Be right back.
All right.
Currently with the legendary tributes, I don't know if you had to farm them too much. They're the best way, like by far, to get greater affix skill rings on gloves, right? You put like the 5 million gold juice on it. I have like 6 pairs of greater affix cool gloves in my bag. Same thing with like crushing hand. You get so many if you put the 5 million gold option on there and you're doing your united ones in a rota. So like whenever gloves drop, add that chance to roll the skill ranks, and you have the ancestral proc. So you just get so many plus skill rank gloves. So if they just added more stuff to that, I think I'd feel a lot better.
Yeah.
I think it's fine if there's like some way to like game the system a little bit as well, like with like okay, have the right combo of a tribute and a bargain, for example, like that. So that I think that makes sense. It's like there's like also like this bit of like mastery of the game, right? You understand, okay, like what are the odds of rolling the skill and the GA, and then you get something really valuable out of it. I think that's cool, but I think in general, like there needs to be some tuning. So maybe we can like wrap it up here on the other city. Rax, yeah.
Well,
one last thing.
Yeah, one last thing to piggyback off of what you said. I was very surprised because in the campfire that they had going into the Vessel of Hatred, they specifically said, I'll never forget, I'll remember this. They said that they don't want to build in mechanics like that, where if you have you need a specific knowledge of the game to get more rewards. And I was just sitting here like shocked to hear that, because I thought like that's the entire point of playing the game. Like when you acquire, like let's take Diablo 2 for example. When you're playing Diablo 2, if you go to the Countess and to farm at Tal Eth for stealth? I mean, bro, the stealth is so good. Like it feels good to play the game as a beginner. Okay, Diablo 2 is fun. You get your ass kicked. You learn a little bit more about, the Countess drops runes. Okay, what are some low-level runes I can make? Oh, I can make a stealth? I can make a stealth in Act 1? Oh my god, I'm a god. Like, that to me is, stuff like that is very, very fun. I'm not talking about the exploits. I'm not talking about the stupid duping. I'm not talking about exploiting the XP. The guys are doing sellers while they're doing pits. That's why they're Paragon 300. I think they just hotfixed that. I'm not talking about exploits, but learning combinations like that and just getting better at the game, to me, that's so rewarding. When they explicitly say that they're not building that into your game so the systems don't work like that, I think that is a huge L. It can still be fun as a new player when you don't know anything, but if you play for a while and you gain knowledge and you learn how to use the systems better, that is also very rewarding. If they aren't built that way, then you don't get to have that experience and everyone's just playing the same game for always. I do not think that that is a good thing at all.
I agree. I think there's like some discussion I see in chat about, okay, the casuals don't go online and look it up and stuff, but that's also the part of the playing the game, right? You don't have to go online and look it up. Maybe at some point you just have the elimination, right? It's like, oh man, I can combine this tribute with that bargain and it's super juiced. Hell yeah, like this, you can farm counters in Diablo 2 and get runes, and then at some point you realize, oh yeah, Tal F, I've heard about this. Boom, I found both of these in like two different characters, and now I can combine them, and now, okay, in the future I can go, right? You don't have to go online, look it up, or have a guide or whatever for all these things. It's just like part of like learning the game, I think. And there needs to be much more of that. I agree with this.
I think as far as the looking online thing, the way I feel about that is if you have a game that does a good enough job at leading you into the game to get you committed and interested in the game, that you want to then start engaging outside of the game with the community and looking things online, then the game's pretty good, is what I've noticed. So I noticed even PoE's kind of noticed they got this problem too, where like PoE 2 is now starting to introduce mechanics like better in-game with videos, and they're removing some of the more annoying mechanics, etc. So I think when you get a game that kind of holds your hand for a little bit and teaches you, and then you're like, wow, I'm really into this game, and now I'm going to start looking things up. Then it's a fair enough balance.
There's also a chance you don't look something up and you find and stumble upon it yourself. There's always that discovery aspect. A lot of people forget that. You don't always have to look stuff up. You might be able to figure out yourself. I didn't look it
that's
up,
what
but
I just
everyone already knew
described,
about it beforehand. Yeah. You look it up like, oh man, everyone already knew about this.
That's what
Yeah.
happened to all of Woody's work leading up to the Spiritborn. He theory crafted for a month, and then all the bugs threw away all his work, and they found something else, and
boom.
there it goes.
Well, I might still have some old planners that I can pull out of the closet at some point. Yeah. So.
But they will be valuable next year. I mean, they're going to make updates to the class, of course, besides bug fixes. But it will be valuable, just not today, in a month.
Yeah,
or so.
exactly. So it is what it is. Anyway, next topic. I want to talk about the Dark Citadel, and I heard Rex has a lot of thoughts about that. So maybe let's start with his opinion.
Okay, so again, hi Callie, nice to see you. Want to join me on this? Okay, so I have a problem with the Dark Citadel. So the actual, I think that the game mode has the brightest future in Diablo 4. If they continue, like let's look at Helltide. Helltide on launch, almost none of the game modes really worked. I thought Helltide, comparatively to the other game modes, was one of its better game modes. And then, even though it was one of its best game modes, they continued to iterate on it. And Helltide is actually really fun. Now you can level through it. It's one of the best leveling options. When they adjust the rewards, it's very valuable to farm, even though I'm not farming it right now. Dark Citadel, at its core, I think, has a lot of potential. I like that there's actual mechanics. I like that there's teamwork. It's not so easy to build into ARPGs versus MMOs. It's cool. They could have mythic versions and make the bosses insanely hard. I would salivate for that. Please make that. Here comes my problem. They said in the campfire that there's going to be exclusive rewards, cosmetic rewards. It doesn't have to be items. So any casual who can't get really strong and can't make it to T4 and can't do the raids, I don't want you to miss out. It doesn't have to be actual items. It could just be cosmetics. It can be titles. It could be mounts. It could be whatever. They're going to put it in the Dark Citadel. So then I was really, really excited. I was like, they're going to put a godly mount in there. They're going to put a godly armor set in there. Chronix like, I'm going to be on the launcher this day. We're going to power up in T4, and we're going to carry so many people. We need 2 people to carry, so we know what we're doing. We're going to carry everybody through T4. Everyone's going to get their armor sets. Everyone's going to get their godly mounts. It's going to be so fun. It's going to be a big community event. We ran it, and then we realized, well, first of all, you don't get it guaranteed on the drops. And then I thought about it some more, and I guess that's okay. Like, I thought it was going to be an auto drop. You just get the set, you get the mount. No, each individual piece has a rare chance to drop from each boss or each wing. Right now, I have the mount armor, and I have like 3 of the 5 pieces of the set. So I'm almost done with it. But then I looked at the armor set, and I looked at the armor mount, and I looked at it with my chat, and it was just the biggest disappointment ever. If you compare the mount armor and compare the set that you get from doing supposedly the hardest content on the hardest difficulty to anything, you could compare it to the sets that they put behind a paywall in the battle pass, or you could compare it to the mount armor and the mount that they gave you for pre-ordering the game or the ultimate edition of the game. Anything behind a paywall, it's not even close. I think it's kind of like the difference between like the Spiritborn level of polish and the other classes. It's just so watered down, and my entire idea of, hey, I'm going to help everybody clear the T4 Dark Citadel for all these cosmetics was instantly wiped away, because it doesn't matter. No one's going to want this set, really. No one really wants this armor mount. If you just pre-ordered the game or if you bought the battle pass, you already have a much better set. I think Blizzard makes this mistake a lot. They don't put enough dopamine. They don't put enough chase items to go after in these end game activities. There needs to be an awesome title. There needs to be a super awesome mount. I'm talking like the Phoenix, the Alar mount from Kael'thas, from beating the T4 Dark Citadel. I want to fly around on a Firebird. I want to be glowing like I want to be Barney. I want to be purple and glowing like I have full Tal Rasha's set in Diablo 2 for beating the T4 Dark Citadel on mythic difficulty. I understand that they want to make money. They want to sell you an expansion every year. They want to sell the battle pass. Everything has got to be behind a paywall, but they have got to put really godly rewards at the end of these T4 things in the game, because it has completely deflated me from running the Dark Citadel at all. It's pretty cool. I think as a game mode, it has like the biggest future, and it could be really fun. But the rewards are absolutely not there for me at all. Like not even close.
Yeah, the Dark Citadel for me is easily my favorite thing they've ever added into the game, and it's in my opinion the best job they've done in the game. Like it's super fun and actually well implemented in my opinion, right? But when I realized the cosmetics are RNG, I have ran it 15 times and I have gotten 0. So when I realized that, and then the mount itself is kind of like it's like the plain brown horse of cat mounts, dude.
Yes.
It's just it's it's a little bit of a bummer, and they also have like the lesser cosmetics that drop in tier 4. So you have the normal Khazar gear, and then you have the greater than gear. So you can get the lesser than drops as well in tier 4, which in my opinion should just like not be a thing. If you get cosmetic drop, you should get the greater drop, in my opinion, which is kind of frustrating as well. So yeah, when I realized it's RNG, I kind of just stopped carrying entirely because it's going to take like 60, 70, 80 runs or something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with what you said up there. It should be like you guys played World of Warcraft, original classic WoW, when you saw someone like standing in their hometown with full tier 3, you're like, wow, that's cool.
Yes.
That guy has full tier 3. Like we don't have that really in Diablo 4 at all. You're like, oh, that guy had the $24 Bwamsandi skin. That looks really good over there. So so yeah, just having like a more iconic, like free to grind or just skill-based skills and earnable items. Maybe even have like weapon glows in the game. Like, you could have like a glow on your pointed staff, right, for your Spearborn, right? And that dropped from the raid or something like that. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like really, really work on refining the cosmetic rewards there. And then outside of that, for the new raid, it is fun. It's like baby's first raid, right? It's not too complex. You have a detailed list underneath the mini map on like what objectives to do. I think having a harder difficulty that doesn't have that, maybe having more mechanics, eventually could possibly be a thing, like where they expand upon that. And maybe they'll add the primevals there. Eventually we'll get like, Mephisto actually in the game in Diablo, and we got the primeval raid, and that could be cool. But I think one of the biggest thing, and a lot of people have communicated this to me, is a lot of people have raid anxiety. And I've been running the raid a lot. I have all the cosmetic beside the mount barding. A lot of people get raid anxiety, and it's not that they can't do the raid, they just don't like playing with other people, right? And ARPGs historically have been solo-based games, unless you're incentivized to farm in a group while doing like Chaos Sanctuary or Bale Run. But a lot of times you just enter a run with bots, and they're just paladins teleporting with Enigma, and they drop a portal in Chaos Sanctuary, and you like run around, and then you try to fight their picket for loot. I think they should really add a solo option for the raids, right? So not take away the multiplayer raid, but give people an option to have that solo option. I still think they should do that for the bosses too, or instead of doing boss rotas all the time, there should be some equalizer where if you're entering like Duriel solo, you get like some enhanced drop rates or some modifier where you really don't feel like you're missing out on that much loot because you don't want to find other people and use a party finder or use Discord. Because there's been like especially on software, there's been an abundance of scammers and boss rotas. The people are alluding to Discord to find groups on Discord. If people scam, you can get them banned from Discord and they can't post the groups anymore. But in Party Finder, you're going over there, you're putting your Durals, and the guy, hey, it's your turn. He just dips out and runs away. You're like, oh, well, minus those bats. I guess we'll find another person. That's an opportunity cost lost there, but it's just so good to farm in a group. So you're like, oh, whatever. I got scammed one run. We'll find someone else. So I think they need to put some equalizer stuff in for solo players that don't want to play in a group.
Yeah, one more point about the cosmetics too is I believe it was pre-launch of the game, they were talking about the cosmetic drops or the cosmetics of the game, and I think they kind of stated that the cosmetics in the game are always going to be the best looking from the in-game awards from like actually playing the game.
Yes.
I think we've kind of gotten to a point where most of the really good looking cosmetics are either like premium battle pass or shop purchases. Like don't get me wrong, those cosmetics look quite good, but like the best looking ones are definitely the shop now.
I mean, yeah, it's not even close. It's by far the thing that I want what mods ask for. I want there to be an option for solo players, but I know Blizzard, and I've seen a historical theme here. When you request something, you are way more likely to get a change into the game that does not require a lot of development time. Some of the ways that they've designed some of these bosses, it's like they're going to have to do some serious work on even the existing boss fights to make them soloable. Like, part of it is maybe you just extend the timer so one person can just actually take the time to go do all of the mechanics. But I think there's even, as I think about some of the different fights, there's even more required to it. Like, how do you press both pressure plates? Okay, you open one door. When you get to the end, you're gonna have to put another portal, go over here. There's a lot of development time there. So I want it, but I'm not optimistic that we're going to get that anytime soon. If they had a shock announcement that season 7 now the raids are soloable and they redid it all, I think that's going to be a big surprise to me.
Okay, like for me, I gotta say, as someone who usually plays hardcore as his F, I really don't mind that the raid is not soloable. It's like I actually had fun grouping up with people and trying to do the raid, and it kind of got me out of the solo player role. And I think this is really what they're trying to accomplish, and it has done that pretty well. I really enjoyed doing the raid, at least for a few times I've done it now. And especially on hardcore, there's like this extra component to it. You have to rely on your teammates, and you have to try to get through it, and everyone has to get out alive somehow. In fact, yesterday I did a party finder group citadel on hardcore run. that was actually some of the most fun I've had, man. It was awesome, man. Unfortunately, one guy I think he DC'd and died somewhere, but otherwise we got through with everyone alive. And it was actually going pretty well. And there was one guy who had no scroll and has not done the Citadel before, and we got him out alive. So that was cool. I love that. That was amazing. Yeah, and stuff like that. It was actually kind of interesting to like do something like this. My first run I've done this with Chronix and Uki when we tried to do like the world first on like launch, and then I hadn't really touched it for a while, and then I did this run. And it was a completely different experience because I didn't do it with people on voice comm, with my friends or something. And that was actually cool. So I'm not really sure if like this raid anxiety is a huge problem, really. Like, I don't know, like you don't have anything to lose going in there on softcore at least. You can just group up and try to do it. And if it doesn't work out, okay, tough luck. Maybe try again or try on like a lower difficulty, right? You can do it taunt 1 and just one-shot everything if you have to. At least you kind of see everything once. And once you have seen everything once or twice, then you kind of know what's going on, right? And if it's a point about making it soloable, I think this would be kind of a mistake. I think this is the content that is kind of just reserved for group play, and that's okay. And if they try to water it down so it's soloable, then it will lose a lot of its charm because they have to make the mechanics so simple that one player can do it, or people ask for like a mercenary can be the second guy, but how are you going to teach a mercenary to stand on the plate, right, or like get you out through the portal from the other side or whatever, right? So you can't do that. So I think there's no way to really make the raid a solo thing. I think having the flexibility for the devs to design fights where you need 2 people just makes the fights way more interesting. And I think they should rather just focus on that if they want to make more raids in the future.
Yeah, so one thing to add onto Woody's thing at the end there, if to make it soloable, then they are going to, as Woody said, water down the fights. I think that's going to take away a lot from the raid. The fights only need to get harder. We need a mythic version of it. We need to get it more difficult with more mechanics. That'll be more fun. So if they're going to make a solo version, again, very unlikely that they would do this, but we almost need them to just actually retune the boss fight for a separate solo instance. If instead they say, oh, well, yeah, now the raid can be soloed, and now all future design will make sure that we'll just design it so a solo person could do it. I think that's going to hurt the raid more than it would help it. So if they're not willing to actually make like a different fight or slightly different mechanics for a solo player, I don't know if I would vote for that.
I think what we maybe really are looking for here is another game mode that we can add that would actually satisfy this feeling for like a solo player. And there's one example that I have been kind of envying Diablo Immortal players for here. So funny to drop that, but there is, I'm not sure what it's even called, but there's some game mode that's like a roguelite mode where you start with like nothing and you kind of build up your character. It's a bit like the Torghast from WoW, And I know that Tartarus WoW was not really super well received because of, the grind and whatever. But the concept behind it, I think, is amazing. Like, you start and run, like, like with the same power level with any character, right? You go in as a Spiritborn, and then after the first level, you get your first skill or your second skill or something, right? And then you get your first item, and you choose like one of 3 options. A little bit like how Hades does it or something. And I think in such a game mode that it's actually like let's say a long-lasting run, like a kind of like a long-term run, right? That you can come back to if you want or whatever, right? You can make it like very complex, very long if you want, and like keep adding stuff over like 50 different levels, and then you have like the final boss fight, and you take it down or you don't, with like all the choices that you made along the way. And I think this would be something that I will be looking for here as well. So that would be amazing to have such a game mode. And I think this would probably really satisfy the people that want this like more complex, more interesting, like hard boss fights, and like mechanics matter. Because I think in the current game, with like the imbalance between builds and classes and anything, it's very hard to make a like this mythic game mode that Rax alludes to that is like super tough and you have to like coordinate and whatever. And I don't think that this is ever going to happen, because at some point we're going to get to the point where you just overpower it, and we don't really care about much anymore. So I think what we would really need is something like the like whatever it's called in Diablo Immortal, right? This roguelite basically.
I forget the name of it, but that mode, it would actually be really nice. Just basically copy paste it in. You would have a shop. You would earn coins from killing things, and you could literally buy your build. Like, oh, you have 3 options. It was sort of like you're saying a survivor mode or a roguelite implementation. But the coolest thing about it is the reward at the end of it. You get to pick an item from the build you made. So you would take all of these, you could like put your unique in, you could put your aspects in, etc., from depending upon what you're offered. And then at the end, it's like, which of the piece of your build do you want to take back with you into the real world? So if there's something you're specifically trying to target farm, you're like, I have to get this aspect. Well, you can do that, but now you're going to have to beat the mode with that aspect that you desperately need. So I actually really liked that element to it as well.
That's even cooler, yeah.
So the thing that you're describing, I think, is what they were hoping the Infernal Hordes would be. But the Infernal Hordes are nowhere near as cool as that. The rewards, like the gameplay and the building and the rewards at the end, are not as cool as that. You're kind of just essentially fighting the same mobs over and over, unless you throw in the Aether Fiends or the Hellborns. And all of the rewards are just kind of just, this is what I have constantly said is the problem. The powers that you pick, the boons and the banes, all they do is multiply up your Aether drops. They don't actually change really the gameplay at all, which is, again, goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's the variance. If you close your eyes, or I guess don't close your eyes, but if you just look at 2 different Infernal Horde runs where you picked completely different powers for 10 waves, they look exactly the same. I mean, it's you're spinning in a circle, standing in a red circle, killing pretty much the same monsters with plus or minus 200 Aether from the previous round. I think that this is what they wanted the Infernal Hordes to be, but it didn't turn out that way.
Yeah, exactly. And now I think we already, like, at least personally, I gave that feedback to the devs, like in the season 5 PTR and like all the talks and whatever. That the idea behind like this choosing and like building up your run with like different boons and banes, and that's kind of cool, and they can keep Infernal Hordes as they are. I think that's okay. But having this extra mode where, first of all, you actually go somewhere, like physically with a character, right? Don't stand in the same room. That's important. Want to dive into the dungeon or something, right? And then you go deeper and whatever, right? And then you find something, and that is like outside of the regular like reward loop. I think that would be really cool. Like they had so many opportunities there to kind of just like, okay, man, I have 2 hours on this Sunday now. I'm gonna go do one run of this thing, and just it's gonna be a completely different experience every time, and that would be badass. And also, it kind of like gives everyone a chance to have like a good run or a bad run, or like sometimes you just get you just have no chance, right? You just get screwed, and that's it. Like if you compare this, like, I don't know, dungeon runs in Hearthstone or something. I love doing dungeon runs in Hearthstone. If anyone remembers that, it was exactly that thing. You build your deck as you go, and it was just amazing to do. I don't know, I loved it every time. It was something else. I would try to do like a certain combo that I had in mind or whatever, and yeah, there was so much cool stuff, and I couldn't do something similar in D4, I think.
That would be so fun if you started an infernal horde. Obviously, like the monsters and the gameplay within it also need to be better. But imagine you started and you have like a new character and you choose your class and you start off with, I don't know, 20 skill points and maybe you pick one of 3 Paragon boards and then they give you 50 Paragon. So you spend like, I don't know, 5 minutes of putting it in or whatever. And then, yeah, the first reward is either, oh, you get 5 more skill points or 20 more Paragon, or you get to pick a legendary power or this or that, and you're just kind of crafting it as you go with 10 waves. It would probably take a while to do a run. Like it would be like a 1 hour run, but the rewards would have to be like, excellent if you got through it. But that would be so much more fun than what we're currently doing. It just sounds infinitely more fun.
Before we get too far off the topic of the Dark Citadel, there is one other thing about that I wanted to mention, which is, in my opinion, it would be great if they actually made it co-op viable in terms of couch co-op. I think one of the coolest parts about Diablo 4 is you can couch co-op with somebody, your partner, whoever you can play through, and you have a great time. A lot of people enjoy the couch co-op, and I feel like more games should have couch co-op. But the Citadel, you can't actually do it as couch co-op. Now, maybe the argument could be, okay, well, then get someone else in the party that can fulfill the other part, but actually working together and having like you go on this side, I go on the outside, and you can play couch co-op. It's the only part of the game that you can't actually experience as couch co-op. And in my opinion, it's the best suited for it. So I feel kind of bad for the people that maybe just play all the way through the game with their friend or whatever, and then they can't split up and do it because there's no split screen or something like that.
I was actually very surprised to learn that. I kept, like, someone told me about this and I was like, what? Like, I could not believe that this is not couch co-op viable. That's crazy to me. Like, how did that happen?
I wasn't even aware.
Yeah,
that kind of sucks for couch co-op people, I guess.
Yes. I didn't
because
know that either.
This is the thing for it, this is the thing, like, as DM said. It's crazy, actually. But yeah. Maybe there's like some solution to that in the future. Maybe they can do a split screen and when that, you have to split up or whatever, but I guess they don't want to do that, or maybe it's too complicated to introduce now, so who knows. I guess they thought about it at least.
I mean that's crazy. You implement something that's multiplayer only and you can't. I don't know. That's that's actually crazy.
Okay. And another topic I want to talk about is the pit. So we had like a huge revamp. Glyphs are now in the pit. They work basically like Diablo 3 legendary gems. Just you can't share them between characters, I guess. But how do you generally like the place of the pit in the game, as like, the difficulty structure, as like a pushing mode, and for the glyphs, or whatever else you want to share about the pit?
I think it's improved. I think the pit was less fun, less rewarding before. So I think in general it has only improved. I think a lot of people's opinions on the pit are very skewed by how powerful the Spiritborn is with all of these bugs and these crazy mechanics. Like, if you get to pit 65, you're in Torment 4, and then it's supposed to be like quite a grind to even get up to like pit 80. I remember when we were talking in the early access, a bunch of people were not only trying the Spiritborn, but trying a bunch of other classes. Again, we don't have our renown. We're a little bit more nerfed, and we don't have that much time. We're not blasting as hard as when it's actually out. But people were saying, man, I think the cap for this build might be like pit 80, pit 85. And I actually thought that was a good thing. Like, I think that like 165, once you get into World Tier or Torment 4, I thought it was going to be a lot more fun if the difficulty ramps up really good. And the only reason why it goes to pit 150 is just to identify outliers. When I compare Diablo 3's progression, in the season 1, it was a miracle. Like, the world #1 clear was like Greater Rift 54, and clearing pit 1 or GR 150 was completely out of the question. And then as we added, yeah, so then as we add zeros and zeros and zeros and multipliers over 8 years of development or whatever, now all of a sudden it's, rank 1 cleared GR 150 in a minute 17, and world #2 is a minute 17 and 8/10 of a second. It's just like, and people who experienced that almost universally agreed that on the leaderboard pushes, it was way more interesting when someone cleared a 143 and no one else did versus everyone's time attacking GR 150 for the perfect map, the perfect mobs, the perfect density, the perfect pylons, and the perfect boss with a power pylon. Now, that's not what the pit will ever become with how they designed it, but I think the underlying philosophy is still there that if everyone's just speed running pit 150, I think it's worse than if it's actually a climb after pit 65.
Are other classes clearing 150 like quickly at this point or at all?
I think the
there's
highest other class is like 110 or 100, no, 115, something like that.
Yeah.
someone was saying there's a new bugged throw barb that has perma overpowered that I guess they're running on Chinese servers that did 150. It
Really?
just came out last night. It's like some perma overpower bug. I was trying to like look into it to see how it's done, but yeah, it's like an extreme outlier. But
Okay.
it's not intended like an exploit. Yeah,
Nice.
but not. I agree with Rex though. Like, yeah, 150 just seems silly. Like, working your way up is a lot better. So you're gonna
I
feel
think
bad when
the
you do
main
the Spirit
problem.
Corners.
Oh, yeah. I think from my perspective, the main problem comes with like the 150 clears is that we have exactly the same problem that we were trying to get solved with the expansion launch, which was, every outdoor content is completely trivial and you one-shot everything in whispers and hell tides and whatever, right? And now we had torrent 1, 2, 3, 4, and we basically back to exactly the same spot we were before with World Tier 4, where everyone was moaning, please give us a World Tier 5 so that we don't one-shot everything, and we only have to like look in the direction of the monsters and they already explode, right? And it's just kind of like, now we have the new system that is supposed to solve that, and we're still so much more powerful than torrent 4, right? That it just happens like all over again. So I generally like the progression curves that we have now with like going through the torments and leveling the glyphs and all that. And I think the pit is like a very good system that I have made for that. But it's like we go way too far, I think. And what Rax said, for example, with like, oh yeah, this build is probably gonna cap out at 80. Maybe this one goes to 90. Maybe you can even max out the glyphs if you really try with this build. Get them to 100, and that's gonna feel really good, right? When you accomplish it and do the grind. And it doesn't really feel that way, at least from the Spiritborn perspective. And even on other classes, we have many builds that go beyond 100. And I think that's actually too high. This is my opinion. I think we should not even go to 100. Maybe like the extreme top end builds. And the 100 should already be like an incredible benchmark, I think. So this is just what I believe here.
Yeah,
I think the other.
Go ahead.
Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah, just Spiritborn's obviously the outlier, and everyone knows that. So I just like look at the other class in terms of pit. Well, they already said it's going to get nerfed. They're not going to bring every other class up to Spiritborn damage. Doing speed running 150, that would be quite silly for longevity of the game. They just have to have more torment tiers, more pit levels, right? They'll probably have to do another stat squish and redefine everything next expansion again. So it'd just be silly to boost everything up to Spiritborn levels. But yeah, if you just look at every other class outside of some of like their design issues, like Druid, them like nerfing like landslide build and stuff like that, them killing off some old fun builds, they need to bring some of it back. The other classes are within a pretty acceptable range in my idea. It's like 118 to 105, 105 being Druid's lowest. But outside of that, my opinion of Pit is I think they need to work on some of the layouts. You have like some of the dungeon layouts where you have like the one long road and then you have to double back and you go down the next long road. So I think they need to work on making some of the layouts more linear. That's one thing. A lot of times you don't have enough mobs, right? So you kill like this one last mob and it filled up 20% of your bar. You're like, oh, what's this? So I think, adding possibly more floors, just work on some of the layouts, making them more linear. That would help out too. And I think obviously more boss variety. They have these bosses from the Kuros Undercity. They have some of like the different dungeon bosses from the expansion, throwing some different boss variety in there. So it just kind of like mixes it up a little bit. But yeah, I think the pit's in a lot better spot than what it was before. It just needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah, so the backtracking is a big problem. Not having enough monsters to clear the pit. Like I've had situations where you're on floor 2, you clear floor 2, you have to go back to floor 1 because you went straight to the portal, and you actually just don't have enough monsters to finish it, and that just feels so bad. They have to fix both of those things. One issue for me in the pit, more specifically for pushing the pit, is there is almost no opportunity to exude any skill. So if someone comes up to me and they say, I have cleared pit 100, the translation into my brain is your build and gear are good enough to clear pit 100. In greater rifts, you could, with your knowledge and with different gameplay, you could make up the difference of like 10 GR tiers, which is it's a 17% increased damage if I remember correctly every single tier. So it's 1.17 to the 10th power harder just by playing smart. Now, of course, there were a lot of problems with it. The fishing was stupid, and the mob types were balanced, and you have to fish for certain pylons and that. But I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about, the gathering, doing this, doing that, knowing when to skip this, knowing when to skip that. This is just completely non-existent in the pit. You just run through, you fight the boss, you dodge the red waves. That's about the only skill that you exude in it at all. And that's another aspect that's missing for me. Yes, for most of the pit, what you're doing is speed farming. Speed farm it, you level up your glyphs. Okay, you're getting your obols, you get the gear. But when you actually go to push it, it really is only a function of how good your gear is. I wish Blizzard would be able to implement some of the skill aspects without implementing so much of the fishing.
One other thing that I feel like would be more enjoyable for the pits for me too is if we could have additional affixes for elite mobs. I kind of get sick of suppressor waller damage reduction on like basically every mob. So it's okay, where's the guy with the plus? Let me attack the guy so now I can actually damage the other guys. Like that seems to be quite a bit of the mobs, which doesn't add as much variety in terms of the actual pit push. So it would be kind of nice if we had some like non-CC related affixes in the game. So I don't feel like I'm doing the exact same mechanic on every pack of mobs, other than the other issues already listed. Like there's not enough mobs, etc. Backtrack and all those aside. But like that's one that has annoyed me in particular about the pit.
Yeah,
I kind of agree with that. I think they could add a lot of stuff there, like especially like for example these aura monsters. We only have this damage reduction aura. Why isn't there like some other auras that make the monsters faster, stronger, or whatever, right? Add a cold aura, or you kind of have these priority targets, and they're kind of squishy, right? You can just go and like blast down the aura guy, but then you have to prioritize. Do I really want to do that, or do you just blast down the rest of the pack first? And there's like so many little things I could add, and I fully agree with Rax here. Like coming from like Diablo 3, where I basically grew my career as the solo pusher guy, right? I was solo pushing every season, many builds, and I was trying to chase the rank ones. And I usually did that with like low paragon level and these kind of things, and that was really fun. And I don't have that fun factor at all in the pit when I push. It's there a little bit, but this is mostly for the reasons of like, okay, I want to get my glyphs to 100. And not so much because I really care about, taking a rank 1 on the non-existent leaderboard. It's like, yeah, even if there was a leaderboard that a lot of people are asking for with the pits, I don't think it would be anywhere close to the fun that I had in Diablo 3. And that is with all the fishing we had to do in Diablo 3. Of course, I expect there will be fishing we have to do in D4 if that ever comes, to pass. But there's just like not really enough of like a skill expression in the pit as it was in Diablo 3. Diablo 3 had like way more nuance, way more levels of complexity when it came to actually playing a run correctly compared to the pit, where it's just like you go from pack to pack and okay, maybe you try to pull 2 packs together, and this is like the extent of what you're doing, and then you just get the right shadows in the boss fight and dodge them, and that's it, right? So there's not enough going on. There's not enough strategy as it was like in Diablo 3, and this is really missing in the pit when it comes to like being a push mode, especially with I fear that they're gonna add a leaderboard to the pit and just do nothing of what we talked about here. We don't add any new bosses like Mod said. We don't add any new mechanics like Rax said or something. We don't add any new elites like DM said, and we're gonna get exactly what we got with a leaderboard. And I think that's gonna be like the worst case scenario, honestly, because it's really only like a show off, like how good is your gear, and that's it. That's almost it, at least. The skill component is just way too small for it to be very interesting, I believe.
Yeah, and for all those people that are worried, like, oh, I play Diablo 4 for fun. Like, these guys are talking about adding skill and mechanics or strategies into the pit. That, like, I hate this podcast. I hate their ideas. Remember, even in Diablo 3, 99% of what you would do is, again, just speed farming, lower Greaterifs, and just deleting them instantly. You don't think about anything. You click a pylon instantly, you just run forward, you blast everything. That's still 99% of the game. I'm talking specifically only about if you were pushing for your personal best, or if they ever give us leaderboards, going for rank 1. Like, you want to know what's going to happen? All the rank 1 people are going to be the ARM tiers. They're going to be the people that just bought the 4GA everything, that bought 10,000 million Duriel runs. They're going to have quad GA mythics, and they're just going to be way stronger than you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So, if you put skill in the game, then you could potentially win. And it's more fun than just, I have the gear and I just walked A to B and now I'm on the leaderboard. You're on the leaderboard for what? How much you spent? How much you spent on gold? Sweet.
That's kind of like Diablo 4 unofficial leaderboards now. It's like you have all the 4 greater havoc stuff. Like when you're racing for speed time, yeah. Like it's pretty funny. But as long as people are having fun, right?
Yeah, it's important to make sure that people still enjoy the pit, outside of leaderboards and outside of the pushing, right? Pit is still a progression system. Pit is still a farming tool as well, right? So I don't want to take away from that. I personally, I like speedrunning the pit, actually, just grind those 90s or grind those T100s or whatever. I'm grinding with my build, and okay, some builds go higher, some builds go lower. It doesn't really matter. I get my obols, I gamble, I progress my character, I get XP. It kind of feels good to just kind of blast through the pit, a few hours a day, and then do some other stuff. And I keep progressing with it. But in terms of if they ever do something with it, in terms of leaderboards, pushing and so on, there needs to be something more. There needs to be something more. That's what I'm saying. I think the bosses are way improved in Diablo 4 compared to Diablo 3. Like Diablo 3 boss fights were terrible, but getting to the boss, that was really the interesting part. And that's exactly the reverse in D4, where the boss fights, they're pretty decent, I think, with the shadows and dodging and whatever. At least when you get to the point where you can't actually face tank everything. But the the pit itself, I don't know, it's missing something. So
yeah, I really hope they get some aspirational content in the game at some point in time. That'll be nice. I don't know if it'll be soon, but I think they're it seems like they're just trying to focus on expanding the gameplay loop for your normal player, right? Like just having, as we've been saying, more variance in your gameplay, having more ways to focus farm and add stuff. So I think most of us, we probably want aspirational content, right? Something really tests your build and skill at some point. But I think the focus is more on the more casual player base, people that are just blasting for fun 95% of the time.
I think there's a lot of those people too, because I'm sure you can see all in your search traffic on YouTube. Pretty much this week, my Dark Citadel guide started being searched for. You know what I mean? People are, I think, they slowly eat through the content. I don't think necessarily everyone's already on tier 4 and is conquering everything. I will say that my favorite, not my favorite, but one of my more favorite things they've done as of this point is there's no point in the game that is now actively pissing me off. I don't know if you thought about this in the other seasons. There was I hate doing this thing, but I have to do it anyway. Leveling glyphs. I actively am angry having to do this part of the game. Now everything has this base level of oh, that's kind of decent. I like that. That's not bad. I'm actually enjoying pretty much everything. And then I'm oh, this could be better because of this. We could have better affixes of mob variety. The Undercity could be juiced a little bit more. The Realm Walker cannot be a slow piece of shit. There's all these different things you can do to improve it. But the base level of enjoyment and progression in the game the floor has been raised significantly for me across the board in Season 6.
I love how DM's measurement of having fun is the game doesn't royally piss me off anymore. And I would counter,
real, though.
Did the first iteration of Realm Walkers not piss you off? Were you fine with that?
It did. We talked about this. Absolutely.
Sorry, Mods.
The Realm Walker didn't piss me off too much in the beginning. It was annoying, but I really liked those opals, man. Those opals were good. So I didn't mind getting that candy at the end, per se. But the one thing that they did disappoint me with this expansion, the Legion event nerf, I feel like that was one of their biggest marks. Why did they nerf resource gained from Legion event? That finally served the purpose. they kind of like buffed it a little bit in a sense, but now it doesn't really have one. At the timer event, and you go to it, okay, you might get like a tree of whisper, but them significantly reducing the amount of resources and materials you get from it, I feel like was just a weird change.
Okay, in that case, we are leading into everyone's favorite topic, rawhide. Since
Okay. That's a good tangent, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So I totally agree with the Legion like change. Like I feel like Legions have zero purpose, and I really liked what they had in season 5. Like it was kind of like just like hidden. Like many people ignored Legions, and then everyone kept asking me, "I have so much Neve Iron. What do? I can't masterwork." And I said, "Yeah, do Legions." And at least it gave Legions a purpose, and it gave you something to solve your problem. And now we just don't have anything to solve our problem anymore. I think that's completely stupid. Like I'm not sure why that was changed. I think Legions were in the perfect place where there's a funny little thing that is pretty optional, but yeah, now there's like not really a thing. So, but yeah, what do you think about in general, like the material grind, the rawhide, the iron chunk situation, the buffs that you had lately? Like, did you feel that? Like, did you feel the problems? Like, how's that for you guys?
So I can go first here. So to piggyback on what Woody said first about the nerf to Legions, usually when Blizzard makes a change, they either buff something or they nerf something, even if you like completely disagree with it, you could at least come up with an idea of what they were thinking. Like, oh, they did this to accomplish this goal, but I just didn't like it or whatever. And that's fine. The nerf to Legions actually makes no sense. Almost nobody does them. And when people did do them, it was for this niche thing. And then they nerfed it. It's like, why? What? I don't understand what goal that was accomplishing. I think it just, I don't know what happened. Why did that even happen? It doesn't make any sense. The rawhide thing, I actually can't speak to very much. I really haven't. It's because I'm a degenerate blaster, but I actually haven't ran out of anything. Before they buffed Forgotten Souls, I never ran out of them. Before they buffed Rawhide, I didn't run out of it. Before they buffed Iron Chunks, I didn't run out of it. It's probably because I was just doing so many boss runs that it just feeds you so many things. I never got to experience this. But one thing that I would say is, so it was, so many people complained about it. It was definitely too low. There definitely is a point where you make it so scarce that people can't even play the game. That is not fun. But if you gave me a choice, are the resources scarce and you have to use your material opal, you have to go do the Legion events that hopefully they buff again, do you have to go do this to make your build work? I would prefer that over, oh, I have 100,000 rawhide, I can just do whatever I want. Every time that we trivialize one of these things, I think it just makes the game worse. I agree from all the feedback that we got that it was way too low currently, and that's also bad for the game. But I don't want them to just give us so much of these materials that they become meaningless. And this happens so often, and I'm so afraid of this every time they buff anything.
You don't want gem fragments. Just have rawhide just all over the ground and having to constantly convert them.
I mean, we used to have a patch where there was rawhide all over the ground, and he couldn't get rid of it. So that was a thing. Yeah. Oof. Yeah, but now it's gem fragments. Like that gem fragment solution, I have to go to the jeweler and then convert my gem fragments back and forth so that I lose them, because the conversion always makes you worse off than before. So you just convert them like 1,000 times back and forth, and then you end up with one at 999k and everything at 0. I'm just rage quitting, man. It's horrible.
And the gem
fragments.
And they drop on top of the altar, or I think they removed it with the bosses.
Yeah.
They were stacking on the altar, so you couldn't do more boss runs. It's just like, did anybody test this? Like, you get like 16,000 per run, and the cap is 1 million, but that's not. Might sound like a lot, but it's not. You cap real quick, and then you're just like, excuse me, I can't play.
Yeah, it's there needs to be some solution to that, some way to use our leftover materials. And honestly, like I think what Rax said, like, okay, he's afraid that they're all buff it, and I'm mildly afraid of that as well. When they did a buff and now they did another buff, and we have to see that now 2 weeks have already passed in the season, right? Most people have already done most of their blasting, let's say, or like, at least a lot of their blasting, right? Okay, some people kind of like spend time over the entire season, they go slow. Okay, they were going to profit more from this, but a lot of the people that have been playing a lot, they are thinking about like triple masterworking their items everywhere and run out of masterworking mats really fast. They have done most of the blasting, and they don't want to go back now to do more blasting just to get the rawhide after the buff, right? But in season 7, for example, we're gonna have the buffs in place, and we're gonna get a lot more of the material economy, like smoothed out as we go. So this is something to kind of keep in mind here. For season 6, it's kind of too late for many people, and maybe, for example, this Halloween event that's coming, or the mid-season patch is gonna be an event or whatever. Maybe they can focus on that a little bit. Fix the holes that people have in their material economy, and just make sure that the people that have already grinded a lot also kind of get out of it, just fine, even if they don't want to go back and do more now that the buff is live.
So anecdotally for me, the rawhide and iron chunks before, I had no issues with them at all. I had like hundreds of thousands before the buff. And I think the main reason for me is I play a lot, right? I did a lot of boss runs. I was just farming boss bats nonstop. And also I don't trade. So I play like self-found, even though I'm playing in a group. So I don't have like, it's more like the natural flow of upgrades. So I'm not constantly getting stuff to legendary masterwork. I got all my legendary resolves masterworked, right? I have everything perfectly masterworked, but at the natural flow of the game, I wasn't really struggling with my playtime. But I noticed like everyone basically was struggling with that. So the changes feel good. Maybe buff the source of the rawhide when you salvage. It still feels a little bit low. The Tree of Whispers are more rewarding now. Like Boss Rhoda, they're still the best with the material opal, right? So if you're not doing realm walkers, right, you get your material opal, put it on. You can sacrifice loot in the pit. So when you're blasting your pit, you get more rawhide there, but usually you want to use an equipment opal. So yeah, it feels better now, especially if you're actively like trading and like constantly trying out new builds. But that's like a whole nother issue. Currently, Diablo 4, like actually being able to swap and interchange build and experiment with stuff is such a pain in the butt. And you're more often than not just going to make a new character, right? Because how much you have to swap, and there's no armory and wardrobe stuff. But yeah, the materials feel better now to me.
I'm always
It actually struck me the other day that I was doing a pit run, and then my inventory was full at the end, and I had the option to either pick up 2 blue items or 2 legendary items on the ground. And then it actually occurred to me that the blue items are actually more valuable than the legendaries to pick up.
Yeah.
And that was just like such a weird moment. But I had like the the bright light shining. I was like, oh man, yes, I need to pick the blue item, not the legendary. Like I need to leave them there. That was kind of weird.
And to take it one step further, they said that in the high level T4 stuff, that blues and yellows would be auto salvaged and converted to materials. So, right? So the even more 5-head question is, why did the blues even exist in the first place?
Yeah, I think they just kind of have an oversight there that, if I think it comes from the chest, and the chest is like, not auto salvaged, I guess, or something. I don't know. Yeah. I think the M wanted to say something, no?
I was just going to say, for me, I'm always locked behind Obdicite because I don't really do that many Inferno Hordes or the Nightmare Dungeons drop them. But like, that's what I'm always bottlenecked by. People always say it was all these other ones, but I haven't ran into being gate kept by rawhide and iron chunks and stuff like that. It's always Obdicite for me.
Same.
Yeah, just open up a pit before you go to Nightmare Dungeons. You'll get plenty of them.
Oh God.
That like another bug or something?
Wait, don't do that. Don't do that.
I thought they fixed that. Yeah, like doing pits while you do other things was an exploit, and that's like how everyone got to Paragon 300 or whatever. They bought it or they used the XP.
Yeah, you remember the original Diablo 3 exploit where you'd open up the Greater Rift and it added those multipliers from the Greater Rift to all content globally in the game? Diablo 4 had the same exact exploit.
The Bloodshot Goblin exploit, where then you would hit the Bloodshot Goblin, instead of dropping 1 Bloodshot, it would drop like 200, like hundreds of times.
Yeah.
But they banned a lot of people for that. I remember that.
They did, yeah.
I think they rolled them back, right? It was like 1 week, and then they rolled them back to like level 20 or something.
Yeah. They rolled everybody back.
Okay. Yeah. Oh God. Okay. Any other words on rawhide or materials, guys?
No, I think they restore legions to their former glory. That's what they need to do. Really,
I agree with that.
They made no changes.
I can
Legion
get
aren't
down
really
there.
too fun, but if you're really struggling on mats, you just do them every once in a while, right? And it solves that issue, right? So having alternative means to farm, I think, is good in an ARPG. You're not going to
My,
be sitting there
Mhm.
farming Legions all day long.
my favorite thing about a Legion, and I honestly wonder if they should like purposely try to do this, is when the Legion spawns within a Helltide. That's like the jackpot. It's like I'm doing a Legion
Mhm.
and a Helltide at the same time. Life can't get any better than this.
Mhm. Okay, we were already on the topic a little bit about bugs and exploits, and I want to talk about this a bit. So the expansion came out now. The season started with it immediately, and I guess everyone kind of expected this would be a bit Wild West, right? With the new class untested, and all the new content mostly untested and all that. So I wasn't really expecting this to go over very clean, let's say. But we have seen a lot of stuff now, right? We have XP exploits, we have materials exploits, we have another materials exploit, and another materials exploit. We have a tribute exploit. So I can't even count them anymore at this point. And then the question is, okay, where are we at and what should happen? Like, what is Blizzard to do with all of this stuff? They've just kind of been silently fixing this, and sometimes stuff gets reported early enough and people don't really abuse it. Other times it gets out in the wild and everyone is abusing it. We have the dupes as well. So what is going to happen now? And what is your opinion on this?
So
I mean,
go ahead, Dean.
go on, Rex.
No, you go.
The bugs feel kind of bad when it comes to like stay the balance of the game, because obviously Spiritborn is about 1,000,000 times better DPS than any class. So my favorite build in the game right now is the Dance Knives Rogue. It's really fun, but I feel like an idiot when I'm playing it because I'm doing everything at a slower pace than if I just logged onto my bug to shit Spiritborn and one-shot everything. So those types of bugs make me feel like I'm wasting my own time by not using them. The exploits that I'm mostly concerned about are the ones that are related to duplications, because one of the topics we talked about earlier were the auction house. And I feel like that, in my opinion, is something I would love to see implemented in the game. But I think there's a sequence of events in which they know we can't add this type of stuff unless we actually fix the ramping duplication issues in the economy. Because putting the auction house in will make it more obvious that there is economic problems, and they probably don't want to have that focal point on it. So because of that, the content that I want to see implemented, I'm mostly concerned about the ones that affect that content coming to the game.
Yeah, so when I think about this situation, I think about the bugs and the state of balance and stuff like that. I actually take completely the perspective of Blizzard. What would I do if I was Blizzard and I'm looking at, the sea of players that are playing the game, and I'm trying to maximize good and minimize bad, right? Okay, so what is the current state of the game? Game breaking bugs everywhere. There's the XP bug, they fixed it. There's the dupe bug, they fixed it. The dupe bug has pretty much ruined the economy to where now when we find good items, we were selling them. Now they say don't sell them because some of the items go poof. It ruined the economy, so now you just wear them. And then, so what should Blizzard do? They have a mid-season thing that's coming up, and they have said essentially in the past that they will not nerf mid-season, and they will only fix like game-breaking bugs. And another state is, as DM said, anybody that has the expansion probably has either made a Spiritborn or tried it. The percentage of the pie that are playing Spiritborn is extremely lopsided, and they're just destroying all content in the game. So what would I do if I were Blizzard? What I would do if I were Blizzard is actually what Blizzard has done. I would fix the game-breaking bugs like the duping and the XP thing. They need to be fixed immediately. They fixed them. They need to fix the things in the game that they're identifying from their telematics that are ruining the experience of almost everybody. What are those things? Well, you can't get any rawhide, you can't get any iron chunks, you can't get any forgotten souls. It's too low. They fixed that. Now we have the mid-season thing coming up, and they have a choice. They could fix. They don't even have to quote unquote nerf the Spiritborn. They could just fix the bugs, right? There's bugs with viscous shields. I think there's bugs with the Jaguar primary thing. There's bugs about the resolve stacking. They could fix all of that. And when I approach it from their perspective, the launch already happened. We're already going to be a month and a half into the season. Most players, I would say the wind is kind of taken out of their sails. They've kind of played as much as they're going to play. Yeah, some people blast degenerately all 3 months. I would say the vast majority don't. They're already going to be playing something else. So I think that maybe they shouldn't nerf it. They shouldn't fix like those particular bugs right now, because people by that time will have already invested all of their materials into their Spiritborn. A lot of people don't make an alt. If you just nerf it, even if they can still clear T4 content, they are going to feel bad. You're going to generate this huge feeling of negativity. And for what gain? Well, you would do that to A, balance the game, and B, to make the people playing the other classes not feel as bad. But does it even do that? Will the people who started Rogue and your Dance of Knives didn't feel good for a month and a half, but now Blizzard fixed it a month and a half in, now do you feel good? No, you still don't feel good. This season is a wash. I think that's still how people will feel. So what I would do is whatever buffs, like if you've identified certain buffs to certain builds for the other classes that need to happen, maybe by season 7, I would put those in the mid-season patch. Just straight up buffing them to whatever you were going to give them. That might make them feel better without nerfing the overpowered spear points, because that ship has sailed. The expansion's already out. It's already been a month. They've already ruled season 6. You will not change that narrative right now. They need to be fixed by the start of season 7. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then also the other thing, if you do mid-season changes, right, you fix one bug, you might make 2 more. So they might fix something else with the class, and then something else even more broken. So I think them utilizing PTR for these changes is definitely the right play, and just let people play the character that they invested into. The other thing I don't think they're doing too well, and I know they do it a little bit, is they're not really ruling with an iron fist, right? Like when you have these big exploits that really affect the economy, other people's experience, cause the hyperinflation, they need to send out some serious bans. Let people know if you're going to like ruin other people's game experience, you're going to intentionally do stuff that's detrimental to the game, that, you know, you might get a punishment. You might lose access to your account for a month, right? Or 3 months, or depending on the severity of it, maybe forever, right? You have to get a new account. It really doesn't feel like they are policing their game. So people they're just keeping doing it, right? They're like, we could get away with this. We have no fear of exploiting at all.
Yes, I think that's a
Right?
huge
Like
concern as well.
that's people's mindset. They're just like, oh, Blizzard's not going to do anything. We can just do as much as we want.
It's kind of
Exploit
interesting
early.
actually, because when the game came out, like season 0, season 1, and whatever, right? There was actually a lot of account actions, and I think that has kind of like they've kind of been like more washed out over time. You know, it's like we did have this almost the same thing, stellar XP exploit, you know, back in season 0 or something, or back in season 1 with this infinite going event, and people were doing like 50 million XP per hour, you know, crazy, right? And they banned people for that. And now it's like, okay, we have people that, you know, grind to Paragraph 300 like 10 times faster than they should. We have people duping all over the place. We like all that kind of stuff. And then like, this must be so easy for them to see in the data, right? Like they track everything in Diablo 4. They boast about how they track everything in Diablo 4. Like, how can they not just identify those people and then do something about it? This really baffles me. So, but what is your opinion on that?
So I've talked to Blizzard about this specific thing, and the response that I've got is they do ban the people. The thing that they don't do is they never talk about it. They said we don't want to talk about it, but believe me, I had someone in my chat the other day show me, hey, I just got banned, and he said I didn't exploit. I was like, well, okay, well, I guess submit a ticket, but historically, the people who I'm not calling this specific person out, but historically, people who said that they haven't done it, they actually did, because as Woody said, the telematics on the new BattleNet and Diablo 4, they say, are infinitely superior to anything that they've had before. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm not a PR guy. I'm not exactly sure what to do here, but their stance very severely is we're going to ban everyone and we're never going to talk about it. But I wonder if talking about it is, I wonder if On a Campfire said, hey, by the way, we had these exploits, we fixed them, thanks for reporting them. We banned 124,000 accounts, by the way, for exploiting. Don't do that. If you do it, it's a ban. I would like to think that that would be a good thing, but maybe there's more to it that I'm missing, and I don't know. Maybe I don't have enough information here, but I would love it if they would did that as a consumer.
There's actually another component that I want to touch on here, which is that actually lately, especially in my YouTube chat, for some reason, I have a lot of Korean names showing up, and they keep talking about the bugs and the exploits, and the expansion pack is ruined, the season is ruined. It seems to be a lot of people coming from Korea that have that notion that they are really upset about how it's going, that Blizzard is not doing anything, bugs are rampant, and destroying the economy, destroying the competition. Like there are people that are upset about this and actually quitting because of that. So the other question would be, is it actually worse to not say anything about the bans, not do any bans? Because then people might be thinking, okay, those people just get away with it, right? Eventually they fix the bug, and those people that exploited it just get away with it, and now they're Paragon 300 and they have all the items and they have infinite gold and whatever, right? So they also have to think about that.
Yeah.
It's a precedent in other games. You could name a lot of MMOs that will talk about how many accounts they have banned. It seems to work for most of the other games that I have seen. So I don't know why we wouldn't do the same thing in this scenario.
If I was at Blizzard running Diablo 4 or really any game, I would need a very, very good reason to not broadcast that it's honestly like when you make an announcement of you banned a lot of people, to me, you are broadcasting that you care about the integrity of the game and of the players playing your game. It's not even a function of, haha, you guys lost your account. It's a function of the people who play the game the right way. Thank you for playing the game the right way. And the people who don't, we will take action on it. So, I mean, and there's other like conspiracy theories you can get into it. Maybe they're real. Maybe, we don't want to ban this demographic of people because although they exploit, they buy a lot of stuff out of the shop. So we're just banning people that would otherwise buy stuff. But if they're going to buy stuff out of the shop, wouldn't they? I mean, aren't they going to pay $70 for the bundle and you get $70 right there for them to fire it back up? I don't know.
Okay, how about... Wait, Rax. So how about they say, okay, guys, we're gonna offer like this free, awesome new mount for everyone who was found to have a clean account this season, like who didn't do any of the exploits.
Good guy incentive.
Yeah, and then
how about that?
When you get into the Dark Citadel, everyone has to mount up on their legit mount, and if they don't have one, then it's a kick, and it's back to the party finder.
Yeah, but I mean that would be kind of interesting, to be honest. Like maybe it could be a good idea if they want to be like a bit. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, fair play reward. That seems fun.
I mean, honestly, at this point, why not? Like you resisted the temptation 8 different times this season. You didn't do it. Okay, here, have a little goodie. Why not?
Woody, we talked about this earlier. We need to get first the goodies into the end game content. I don't want a goodie. It's like a login goodie. We need to get the goodies in the end game content first before we do this. And if you gave me a choice, do the good players get a cookie or do the bad kids get kicked off the playground? I want their asses kicked out all day long.
I agree. I would also prefer to be like a bit more, harsh with that. But I don't know if what's Blizzard's stance here, or if they have shifted policies. Like, I don't know. You say that don't talk about the bans, but on the other hand, I personally don't hear much about bans. I hear people exploiting all over the place. I don't hear much about bans. So if people are doing that as much and Blizzard's actually doing something, I don't know. It seems like maybe they're going to do it later or whatever, right? But it also seems weird that they would ban people like, a month later or 2 months later or something. So I don't know about what to think about it.
Could
it's
be...
just that we don't have any message right now, I feel, and that's kind of a problem.
Could be as simple as a PR take, which is let's not talk about when we constantly have to ban people, because then we're going to have a million articles circulating that Diablo 4 has a ramping hacking issue. Diablo 4 has a ramping duping issue. Diablo 4, no, there's not really like a ton of coverage about all of the duplication exploits and bug issues going on other than Spiritborn damage.
Yeah, I guess so as well. They probably have a lot of problems to fix, and then maybe eventually they're gonna get around to, doing that. Maybe, right? They say, okay, later in the season, boom.
Yeah. Editorials might not be aware, but the thing is, the community, the core players, the people supporting the game, the people that like it are aware of the issues. So I think having a better line of communication, more transparency, even if it's just vague, would be good.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one last topic now that I had from our prepared list, which is paragons. So we did talk about all the content and the grinding, but we have not really talked about the new paragon system and what do you guys think about it. So maybe you just have like any thoughts.
Same
So-
take I had since the beginning. It's more enjoyable for me. I prefer the Paragon system at the moment. I know some people prefer being able to max out their level sooner, but I'm like 250 or something. Like I still have a long ways to go, and it's going to take forever to get the last 50 levels. I at least like making some progression over the time of playing. So for me, it's preferable over the previous iteration.
I think my opinion of the Paragon system and the runes when I heard it and tried it initially were more negative than they are now. I think the Paragon system and the rune system work a little bit better than I thought they would. I thought that nerfing our amount of choices would be garbage. I thought everyone's Paragon's boards would be exactly the same. And I thought that uh, the incentives would drop, and I thought the grind of the Paragon 300 would be stupid. I really was very negative about it, to be honest. But in practice, it seems to work better than I thought it did. Everyone does seem to have pretty much the same Paragon boards, but I think if you consider all players in the game, it's super easy to hit Paragon 100. It's really easy to hit Paragon 200, not too bad. And then it starts to really ramp up in difficulty. But at Paragon 200, you have almost all of the value that you're going to get out of the Paragon board. It's a million times better than the system that they had in D3 with the infinite scaling and the +5. Everyone almost universally hated that. So this is a good way to have a grind where you get something where there isn't too much fear of missing out on the general population. And it's still with their massive nerfs to like all the additive damage stuff once they fix some of the bugs, picking up 15 critical strike damage here, picking up 3% barrier here as these like last nodes that you're picking up. It feels about right. It feels like you're getting something, but if you're a casual player, you're not missing out too much on it. So I give them credit. I think the implementation was better than I thought it was going to be. Similar to runes, I was very negative about the runes. I thought they were really stupid for a million different reasons. One of the things that I think made the runes better than I thought is actually the economic piece of it. The whole way that they implemented it into the crafting, the uniques, how they made it not so easy to get what you want, how several different ones of the legendary uniques, people want to trade them for each other. I'll trade you a back rune for an ohm rune or a jaw rune. It actually seems to work better than I thought it would. There are some problems like Mods talked about earlier. Oh, you drop it to T1 to get the blue runes because you can't get them anywhere else, and now you're making 10 billion an hour. There's weird things like that. But in practice, it seemed to go better than I thought.
Yeah, so you guys said a lot already. So I kind of like the carrot on a stick. Getting 300 Paragon levels, it's just fully min-maxing your build. I wish there was more options on your Paragon boards and your Paragon board options. The downside right now is every single time you want to make a new board with a new legendary node, right? You just add another stack, right? So I would like to see more legendary powers to have more options for your builds and different ways to scale. And I talked with this with some people before, but I thought it would be nice where the legendary power on the board was actually interchangeable. So you could just it would just be like a jewel sock, and you could just put it on any board because most of the boards are making as like general boards right now. Like the rare nodes, they're not like too conditional. They're just like, oh, here's more damage, here's more elite damage, here's more resource, here's more strength. So instead of developing a whole new board with a legendary power, they just develop more legendary powers and let you choose what board you want to put it on. So it'd be like, I guess it would be like less design work. So you just make more legendary nodes and then you just put it on whatever board they already have.
Would you make those nodes like a drop, something you would farm, or you would just select it from a list and you get them all by default?
Whatever they want to do, whether it's farmable, droppable, like completing the raid, like you get like higher tier ones, special ones, mythic ones. So yeah, they could add like some stuff there. But yeah, just mix it up. Yeah, you don't always have you get the static set, right? Like maybe the default set right now, and then there's the mythic one or some other stuff like that you can like grind out and eventually upgrade to. But yeah, I like the new Paragon. It's a lot more enjoyable than the previous one for sure. Like getting your character up to level 60, the pacing, like getting your build functional by like Paragon level 200. Then you get a little more power at like 225, 250, and then going up to 300. Just like, okay, I'm getting more dex or more strength, right? I'm getting 1.5 more resist. I'm getting a little more armor. I'm getting like some additive damage boost. It's not too meaningful. And you just get like some mount at the end. So yeah, I like the new Paragon system. And then runes, I think the more iconic runes, they need to do a better tribute to them. Getting a jaw rune for me as the Diablo 2 player, that should be exciting. The current implementation of jaw is very lackluster, right? So I think they just expand upon that, right? Like just refine like the different runes, some of the procs and stuff like that, and make them a little more meaningful. But yeah, it adds more build variety, right? You see, well,
It's
actually, we
interesting
see like
because
some pretty dominant ones. I guess it's all like bulwark and like plus skills and health scaling.
it's kind of funny because I run Jar on almost every single build. I love Jar Rune.
Oh, really?
Yes. Dude, I don't have time for like 2-minute runs. I have to do 90-second runs. So I do Jar Rune, man. What do you mean?
Well, I mean,
I just, I just,
teleport.
I just Ravager everywhere. I'm like an epiphany monk. You're just around with ping ponging everywhere.
well, even if you put a jaw rune in all of your builds, a jaw rune drop in Diablo 4 is still not comparable at all to D2, right? A jaw rune is like getting a 3 GA mythic unique. But yeah, another thing that the developers have said is that to remember that the rune word system this is just the first implementation. I don't know what they're doing. Like I don't have anything to share. I don't know, but they said that they have ideas to expand it. So I thought the base system when I heard about it was going to be pretty bad, but it works a little bit better than I thought it would.
Yeah, maybe like to talk about the runes a bit more. We can also like talk about this like with the Paragon topic. That's fine. But I think that it would be cool if like some runes were just like, especially those that are not used for the mythic crafting, for example. Like I guess they're gonna add more runes and they're gonna add like mythics to actually craft, right? So if they add more runes, it would be cool if they have like different rarities for different like options of runes, right? So like you have like we had like these super powerful runes like the Jar or the War Cry or the Petrify, right? That now has been nerfed, but like basically looking back at PTR, I think it wouldn't be that bad to have these rune options, but have them be like super rare, like have like a different weight in the drop table, for example. Right now it seems like they're all kind of the same. Like when I look at my stash, I have like 20 of this, 25 of that, 30 of this. They're all kind of the same, and it's not like I have one Jar rune and I have 5 Bug runes, and I have 2 Ohm runes, and then I have like 15 whatever, like Live runes or something. So they're all kind of like the same weight, and it would be maybe more interesting if there was like more nuance here, like in the drop weights, in like where to get them. Maybe there's like certain like thematic connection where a rune drops, for example, with certain monsters you slay or certain monsters or whatever. So maybe there could be like more stuff like that instead of everything just kind of being everywhere and like random and that's it.
They could add just another tier. They could add mythic runes, and I like that idea. I like the idea that there are a couple of runes that are just obviously just godly if you find them. Just make them very rare to drop. Like, oh, there's 3 mythic runes and they're just straight up incredible, and you can expect to find maybe one of them per season. And if you find it, you're like, oh shit, I got this one. And maybe I don't know, we'll see if they make them tradable or not. But I really like that idea. That I hope that's part of like how they're going to expand the system. That some of them are just incredible, and when you get that dopamine hit that you would get if you found a Jaw rune in Diablo 2.
Any other words here on like the Paragon and runes? And I also want to open up the chat for like some questions. We can maybe like fit in like a few questions that we discussed briefly before you close it. So just like let's finish this topic and then we go to a chat. Anything else on the Paragons?
I think that's pretty much it. I think that just lacks some uniqueness. That's the biggest thing. A lot of them are just like very static effects that you get more power, but you don't really see that power. You know what I mean? It's just like
They're
more
just
damage,
for
mobility.
for
Yeah, it's a little too
for
passive for me in some aspects, I guess.
for me, it's just like they're kind of fun. Like I find fun out of a lot of the other parts of the progression of it. You get a new glyph, that's exciting. You get it, you're leveling up your skill points, those are exciting as you're getting your skill points, etc. But like I don't find myself caring remotely about the rune words. It's there's a bulwark, there's a barrier. I would say they feel mid, but I don't even feel like I notice them. So visually too, they don't really seem to be that exciting. I mean, like how when you use deep freeze on a sorcerer, maybe it's not the most important thing ever, but like it feels good. Like I don't really get like that feel good from the runes, I feel like, and that's kind of what bums me out about them is they're a progression system that I just don't care about. It doesn't feel impactful. I don't really see it on my character. I don't feel like it's build defining, and I don't really feel like it fits thematically on whatever I'm doing. It's just here happens to be a druid bulwark, and
So
there it is. It's done.
I agree with DM, and I think like it's a similar problem, ironically, to the Infernal Hordes. I think runes have the same problem that Infernal Hordes do. All of the rewards for Infernal Hordes are just buffing Aether. But instead, what you should be doing is you should be making me have a very chaotic experience, a chaotic gameplay experience. So when you get a rune and you get Warcry for 15% damage, visually the game is the same. Like you have to get ones like Woody said, like the Jaw rune, or you have to get the one where Spiritborn casts the vortex where the monsters are being pulling in to actually change the gameplay. Like if you compare it to Diablo 2, Enigma let you teleport, which by the way is not equal to letting us teleport in Diablo 4. Diablo 4, Blizzard has done a better job of giving us more mobility across the classes. The reason why Enigma was so crazy in Diablo 2 is movement was a challenge. And then when you have teleport in the FCR, it's game changing. Or when you have something like Infinity, and Infinity just removes their immunity to your damage, that is like a very, very powerful game-changing thing. Or when you build Insight and you put it on your mercenary, you now have infinite mana. You care so much about this. Or you even in the beginning I was talking about, you build Stealth, Tal F, now you're tanky, and before you were getting your ass kicked. So yeah, I agree with DM that more very, very impactful gameplay rune word combinations are what are going to make people care more about the system and like it more.
Almost feels like they should be closer to like what the mythic unique passives are. For instance, like the gain a random shrine from the mage staff, or the Tyrio's Might, you kind of get the artillery shrine, like stuff like that. Kind of feel like it would have been better suited into the rune words themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
There could certainly be options like that to explore instead of just like casting one thing or getting like one block or something. It could also make something like, okay, it's like a very costly offering effect, right? It costs like 5,000 offering, but then you get like a artillery shrine for 10 seconds or whatever. I mean, why not, right? You can do some stuff like that. And I'm sure that especially like if they expand on the system, there could be cool effects that just are maybe more generic, maybe more specialized, and kind of like fit into more builds, and it's going to be kind of cool to experiment. So the rune system itself is kind of like really open to experimentation. I guess we see like a lot of like meta builds using similar runes very often because you need a certain effect or whatever, or it just solves a certain problem of a class very well, and you just kind of go with it. But you don't have to do that. And especially like what I found like in the early game, like the first few days where I just didn't have the runes I cared about, I actually had the most fun of the rune system. Like I just used whatever I got, and at some point I was using the Curbify, at some point it was the Bulwark, at some point the Vortex, at some points the Concussive Stomp, and sometimes the Warcry, and it just kind of always felt good to have something happening from them. So that was kind of interesting about it, I think, and especially if there's like a larger pool of runes and they're like not as easily available, then you always have to kind of like work with what you get, and I think that's the most fun part about them. Instead of just going, okay, I'm just going to get that rune, after like 10 hours, I got the exact setup I want, and I'm never going to change that again or something like that.
And that's how Diablo 2 was, right? Like, how long is it going to take you to get your Enigma? It's going to take you forever. Like in order to make your Call to Arms, you need an Ohm rune. I mean, you want a CTA, but good luck finding an Ohm rune. Usually you have to craft it by like doing Hellforge runs and crafting like Is to Gold, Gold to Vex, Vex to Ohm, even if you want a single CTA. So yeah, that feeling needs to be implemented as they continue to expand the system.
Or even opening them up to like more multipliers. What if you, like you say, they add a mythic rune tier, but then the mythic rune tier, what it does is it makes your core skills like also ultimate skills or also basic skills or something like that. Like give it the opportunity to add another tag or interact with other modifiers, so that way they can potentially make other builds work for certain things. Would be kind of interesting too. Or if not that idea, just some way that have them actually interact with and add additional.
That's actually
modifiers.
something that I discussed in another podcast, which was about glyphs and doing something like that. Like I think Maxroll brought up this point where it's like, the glyphs in the current Paragon system. I haven't really said much about the Paragon system. I generally like the new system, but I think the glyphs are massively underwhelming. I like how we leveled them to 100 and all that, but the legendary effects are really like half-assed, to be honest. It's like 10% damage of this form or 10% damage of that, and basically they're all the same, right? But what if the legendary glyphs, for example, would do something like that? You now have the darkness tag on all of your necro skills. You now have all of your damage converted to lightning damage on the sword, or your lightning spells now have a chance to proc this, or whatever, right? You could do so many cool things, and it doesn't have to be like exactly balanced between the glyphs, right? Like it could be like more of like a feature that you like experiment with to like get certain effects, and then you just need to balance the builds overall in the end, right? And the glyphs themselves don't need to give you exactly 10% power for every single effect they do or something like that. So I think there is so much potential, and I was really sad to see how the legendary implementation of glyphs turned out. So I really hope that we're gonna see some upgrades there in the future in like Paragon 3.0 or something.
I think that's an interesting point you make about like they can break the game, but not necessarily because of bugs. I don't know if I hate the idea of someone figuring out some really cool build using different modifiers and actual progression systems within the game that end up doing the 234 quadrillion damage, as opposed to like it's always a bug that does this. Like I don't necessarily hate the fact that there's that much damage in the game. I just don't like it associated with a bug in particular.
Yeah, I mean this comes back down to like this is a philosophical thing, right? Blizzard wanted to make the game simple. They made the Paragon system simple. When the glyph does 10% damage, it's simple. When it adds the darkness tag to necro skills, now it's what exactly does that do? Now the wheels are turning. It used to be click upgrade 4 times at the blacksmith. Now it's pick your tempers and masterworks, and do you know how to reset it and pick the right things in all the categories? All of these ideas are amazing, and there's so many possibilities. I completely agree where when power comes from theory crafting and cool combinations rather than bugs, I don't mind it at all. You're just a genius for figuring it out. But I want all of these things in the game, but how far is Blizzard willing to go to make all of these crazy combinations possible? But I'm hoping from seeing like the potential of the Spiritborn and seeing how much fun people are having from theory crafting these builds, that they will open up the game to these possibilities. I think it will just be a win, and it will be a lot more fun for people. I really don't know why they would not do this.
Yeah, and especially like thinking about like when we talk about casuals, they will be too complicated or something. On the other hand, I think even casual players, especially those that don't follow meta builds and want to have everything figured out for them, they will have fun with this, right? Even if it doesn't turn out to be the best build ever, but they're like, oh man, this is so cool. I can add the darkness tag to my skills now, and now I'm gonna do this and that. And you're gonna make this experience, right? When you think about it, like when you make your own Spiritborn build, you will have exactly that experience, right? You will see Harmony of Ibawaka, and you're gonna be like, oh wait, now I can do that, And everyone has that experience when they put on this helm for the first time, right? Now you realize, oh man, I can respec my skill tree, and now I can do this, and now I can combine it with that aspect and whatever, right? And it's so cool. And we need a lot more like that. And I think that's also something that, for example, Adam Jackson has said in the past, right, on a campfire chat, like they want to like open up these things and whatever, and they have done so in some ways with like aspects a little bit, and they made like they reduced like damage on Tuesdays a bit and whatever. But there's like so much more potential. And I think that there's only a win that we can have here in the end. And okay, if something turns out to be like Giga OP, like DM mentioned, like you get like the ultra combo going, and it's actually not a bug, and it's actually 100 times better than anything else. Sure, you can still nerf it the next season or something, right? If it's too game breaking, and that's okay. But yeah, like just opening up like more interesting effects through glyphs would be a very good way of doing it, I think.
And more fun's always good. I think eventually they will probably go to the Diablo 3 route, though, with the limited nature of the talent tree. I could definitely see them adding, like, you go to like Crushing Hand right now, and they have like a fire variation instead of like shoots out like flame walls and stuff like that. I definitely think we'll get to that point eventually at some point for Diablo 4, though, where you just have like you click on your core skill or your mastery skill, and you just select what element you want, and then it changes the effect, and it leads to like more build diversity, where you have a more single target oriented skill, you have better clear skill, you have a skill that gives built-in mobility. So I could definitely see them doing that. I don't think that's too overly complex for the Diablo franchise at all, and what they've been going for. The people are already used to it from Diablo 3.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions on chat, guys? So I asked earlier, do we have anything that we should discuss? Otherwise, I mean, we're at like 2.5 hours now, actually. We could also wrap it up. I think we've covered most of the stuff that was already popping up. I kept an eye on chat earlier. So we kind of like integrate a few things in the discussion already. SSF mode maybe is something that is I see popping up. So what do you guys think about that? Is that important? Is that something Blizzard should do?
Well, I mean, I'm always in favor. I'm on the solo player's side. I'm always in favor of SSF all the time. I really don't think we're going to get it for two reasons. One, they've just declined it the whole time. They've never actually. We're going to get an armory. They're building it. We're going to get that. Usually Blizzard will let us know, okay, fine, it's going to take forever, but we will give you this. We've never gotten that indication from them at all. They just don't want to do it. The other thing is the whole like cornerstone big thing that they just added in the expansion is not only not for SSF, it's not soloable at all. So you have to do it with a party. So I would be in favor of adding it to the game. You're going to have to probably change some things about the functionality of the game to make it work. I don't think we're going to get it.
I love solo self-found mode. It's my preferred game mode in like every game. Just like hunting for your own items, being self-dependent on everything. I think the only way it would ever happen is they just add buffs for solo players only, right, to accommodate for the multiplayer aspect. But then that's divvying up the dev team even more to make custom stuff. So they have a lot of members, but there's more stuff to break and more things to fix and more individual adjustments to make, and so much more dev time to allocate. It probably doesn't seem probable with their current direction of the game at all.
All right.
And also another. Sorry.
No,
the one thing that did get affected by the stat squish is conduit shrines. So with their goal of doing the stat squish, they did actually succeed in one regard. That conduit shrine doing no damage nowadays.
Yeah, that's actually a question I was going to talk about. People are asking about conduit shrine.
They're changing it. I talked to them about it. I complained about it. They're changing it.
Yeah, but if Rax is good at one thing, it's that getting Blizzard to change something.
I complain a lot. Like, you guys have no idea how much I complain in the meetings in the Discord. I'm sure Blizzard hates me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's pretty obvious that conduit cannot stay like it is. So I guess that's the thing that needs to change very soon. It's just like annoying.
I want to see an armory.
We talked about trade. Sorry?
I want to see an armory. I mean, in a very soon update would be nice to have an armory, because I'm literally seeing people make 2 and 3 Spiritborns just to have the build on each one, so they don't have to redo it.
I have 5,
which is cool. Yeah, there you go. That doesn't.
I have many. I mean, they said that they are working on it, so I would actually expect that to be in Season 7.
It's coming, and it's coming real soon. I don't know if it's going to be mid-season or season 7, but I think it's going to be one of the two. It's coming.
Yeah, I also expect season 7, to be honest. So I would expect Armory very soon.
Hopefully. I mean, we're 7 seasons in, and this is a D3 feature, so it would be fantastic.
I have a question. I have a question for you guys. Can I put you guys on the spot? Right now with Diablo 4, if you could only change one thing about it, one thing, what would you change? We talked about a lot of stuff. If you only get one thing, what would you change?
DM starts.
Okay. I said it earlier. I personally would love to see, because I'm a big fan of couch co-op. I play a lot of the games with my girlfriend couch co-op on our PS5 all the time, and so I would really like to see the Dark Citadel work, where you can duo it in couch co-op, so a split screen, so one person can go on one side, one person on the other, because you can do it right now, but you have to bring someone else in, which means you're not really like working together. You can only ever take one side at a time together. So if I had to change one, I'd say buff the couch co-op experience, and in my opinion, the best couch co-op content they've ever made, which is the Dark Citadel. So I'd add it where you can split screen that in.
I would say less loot. I feel like we still get too much loot, and okay, we get the GAs and whatever, increase the ancestral drop rate or something. But I think we get too much stuff. I think we get too much stuff.
Woody's number one thing is cut out the eye. I mean, not that I disagree, but there's going to be a lot of people on Woody's porch with pitchforks for that answer.
Everyone is always crying, like it's I want loot filter and whatever. So what do you mean?
When you post this on YouTube, you should have someone will just make a comment dislike Woody's taking the top voter down.
on Woody's. If you upload this to your YouTube, you gotta put audio issues and get edit out that answer.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Unbelievable.
I didn't mean to say that we should progress more slowly. I mean less loot, but more ancestrals or something. That's
okay.
So
okay, that's better.
Too much shit. It's too much shit.
I think this is one thing. It's for me. It's just balancing the end game loop, right? So people just aren't doing the bosses all the time, all the time. Just have rebalancing the loot reward structure, not reducing the loot. So you just have more ways to acquire stuff, right? So you just if your end game loop, you're not just spending all your time in Dural, you're doing more Hell Tide or tributes and stuff like that, So probably just rebalancing loot distribution.
Yep. And then for me, I'm just going to double down on what I said earlier. This is the thing that bothers me the most. I need rare, awesome things to chase. I need the Warglaves from Illidan. I need the Alar mount from Tempest Keep. I need you to put godly titles. I need you to put godly pets, godly mounts at the end of the game that I can chase after and the community can work together to chase after. It is essentially non-existent, and it makes a ton of people quit the game. You build your character to do what? Nothing. You gotta give me the carrot. Yeah.
So I think they should rip off old school RuneScape. So in old school RuneScape, when you kill a boss, you have a 1 in 4,000 chance, depending upon the boss, of getting a miniature version of that boss. We already have the pet system implemented in the game that runs around, gobbles up all your cinders and shit. Just have that same system. No matter what boss you're killing, you have a 1 in 2,500, 1 in 3,000 chance or something like that of getting this tiny pet. Now I know you're gonna say, "Well, that's
Duriel, man, picking up your rawhide, man." Oh no,
yeah, a little Duriel running around. It's actually awesome, because what happens is the completionist later on the game, it doesn't actually change anything. It's not power, but it's super cool. And you'll be like, "Oh, what pets do you have?" And someone's like, "Well, I got this pet, and I got this pet. What kill count did you get? Well, I got spooned it. I got it on my 3rd kill." Well, fuck you. You got it on your 3rd kill. It brings conversation in the game. It's actually a really cool part, because you don't actually end up having all of the pets in old school RuneScape, but the ones you do have, you're super proud about. So I would say that would be a perfect potential solution.
Can we get a mini Tomb Lord?
Mini Tomb Lord, baby.
I think at some point we're actually gonna see a lot more like opening up of like the transmogs and all these things. Like they're slowly going in that direction, very slowly. But maybe we're gonna actually get a 2-mod pad. Who knows? At some point. Good idea though. I like it. I really love to have a little Duriel picking up my rawhide. I gotta say, it sounds very cute. All right. In that case, guys, thank you so much for joining the podcast. So for the viewers, so we had DM, Rax, and DatModz, all big AOPG blasters here. Thank you, chat, for staying. I hope you enjoyed it too. Do you guys have any last words here that you want to share?
Thanks for the invite. Appreciate you.
See you on the super epic Halloween event, KEKW. I don't know. I could be wrong. We could click the shrine and it opens a portal to the cow level, and it could be the most fun thing ever. I would love to be wrong, but that thing was out of all the events that they've ever announced, that was certainly one of them.
Hey, there was some new secret cow level steps in this expansion. I don't know if you guys have done them yet. You could get like the Bardich and you get the key and stuff like that. So
saw that.
Yeah, I did it. It was pretty fun. So I'm like, man, hopefully they're at the cow level. I got these items waiting in my bag for when it opens up, but it's probably them just teasing us for another expansion.
Yeah,
at this rate. But hopefully we get a cow level soon. Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, anyway, thank you guys for having me on the podcast. It's always fun talking to my streamer colleagues. So it was fun. It was enjoyable.
Thanks for bringing me.
Thanks for making the time, guys. Have a good evening.